Chapter 635. Congratulations to the host for completing the temporary mission. Please accept the mission reward. The system's solemn voice resounded in Bufong's mind, causing Bufong to be stunned. In the next moment, the corners of his mouth curled up uncontrollably, and his eyes were filled with anticipation. If it wasn't for the system mission, Bufong really wouldn't care about Zhou Tong, who opened a shop in front of the Cloud Mist restaurant. Now that the mission was completed, the paper-wrapped fish that Bufong was looking forward to should appear. As expected, after settling down for a long time, the cooking method of paper-wrapped fish appeared in Bufong's mind. It was a very detailed method, causing Bufong's eyes to light up. However, Bufong didn't choose to cook the paper-wrapped fish immediately. Instead, he turned around and returned to the restaurant, continuing with the day's business. In the restaurant, Yu was holding a cup of sour plum juice, drinking it happily. Lord Go was lying under the path understanding tree, sleeping soundly. It was unknown when 80 had also laid beside Lord Go, sleeping together with him. This idealistic chicken seemed to have gradually become lazy with Lord Go. The gluttonous immortal's restaurant was short-lived, causing many customers to feel regret. However, this regret only lasted for a moment. In the next moment, everyone flocked to Owner Boo's restaurant. It was proven that Owner Boo's culinary skills were better. Hence, they were looking forward to Owner Boo's culinary skills once again. Zhou Tong had been defeated, so he had to leave. This time, he had truly chosen to leave. He wanted to return to the Valley of Gluttony and cultivate diligently. His culinary skills still needed more practice. In this competition with Bufong, he had learned many of his shortcomings. This time, he didn't choose a chef's challenge. He wasn't as foolish as when Rinzhou, choosing a chef's challenge outside the valley. What if he lost? He couldn't bear the consequences. Of course, it was also because of Wen Renchou's demonstration. Otherwise, he really wouldn't know that there was actually a chef outside the valley who could defeat the elite chefs of the Valley of Gluttony. Hence, he was somewhat thankful and grateful to Wen Renchou. Although Wen Renchou was a little stupid. It's time to report back. Otherwise, teacher will get angry again. Zhou Tong sighed and formed a seal with his hand. A jade talisman appeared in his hand, and he began to construct a formation. After a long time, this area shone brightly, and energy fluctuations dissipated. With a rumble, the light disappeared. Zhou Tong's figure also disappeared. He returned to the Valley of Gluttony. Heavenly Mist City, Star Tower. Because of the fall of Heavenly Pill City, the Star Tower was moved to Heavenly Mist City and became the symbolic building of Heavenly Mist City. The Heavenly Mist City's Pill Tower had retreated to the second line. Although they were still able to nurture many outstanding alchemists, the original dominant position in Heavenly Mist City was controlled by the Star Tower. Luo Danqing was sitting cross-legged in the Pill Tower. Starlight was moving around him, constantly pouring energy into his body. Suddenly, Luo Danqing opened his eyes, frowning on his white face. He slowly opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of murky air. Reaching out his hand, a light blue jade talisman that seemed to be wrapped in starlight appeared, and a wave of mental energy spread out. The Hidden Dragon Royal Court still has the face to invite me to the Glutton God's banquet? This group of people is really shameless. Luo Danqing's face revealed a trace of mockery, and his expression was incomparably cold. If it wasn't for the Hidden Dragon Royal Court supporting the ancient Shura city, how could the Pill Palace lose 2 Pill cities consecutively? Now, they could only defend the last Pill city as the stronghold of the Pill Palace. The other Pill cities were all occupied by the Hidden Dragon Royal Court. Today, they still had the face to invite him to the Glutton God's banquet. Although the Valley of Gluttony's Glutton God's banquet was a grand event every time, the Hidden Dragon Royal Court would invite all the experts of the continent. However, this time, the Hidden Dragon Royal Court still invited him, even though he had just made such a big fuss. This made Luo Danqing feel a ball of fire in his heart. The power of the royal court was indeed terrifying. However, Luo Danqing was helpless. He had to go. This time, it was only the ancient Shura city that attacked the Pill Palace. If the hidden dragon royal court attacked, the Pill Palace wouldn't be able to resist. Only when one reached Luo Danqing's level would he know how terrifying the hidden dragon royal court was. They were the true leader of the entire hidden dragon continent. There were countless experts in the hidden dragon royal court, and they could crush all the other first-rate forces. Just like Jiao Ye, who helped the ancient Shura city previously, he was just a small character in the royal court. However, this small character had almost caused Luo Danqing to fall. Every time he thought about this, Luo Danqing's face became gloomy. Phew! I have to go to the Glutton God's banquet even if I don't want to. I'm afraid that this Glutton God's banquet won't be good for the Pill Palace. Luo Danqing exhaled and sighed softly. Rip! Outside Heavenly Mist City, blue lightning struck. The entire dense forest was turned into charcoal. Black smoke billowed and a burnt smell spread. From the ruins, two figures slowly walked out. It was a human and a beast. The human figure was wrapped in a black robe. His entire body was pitch black, and he didn't seem to have a clear face. His entire body was like a ball of shadow, and the surroundings of his body seemed to be twisting. This figure walked out from the small forest and stood in front of the majestic city walls of Heavenly Mist City. He looked at the city gates of Heavenly Mist City, tilting his head as a terrifying aura gushed out. Under this figure's feet there was a big black dog. This dog was really big, and there was a sharp horn on its forehead that was like a steel knife. The horn emitted a cold light that made people's hair stand on end. The big dog's fur was pitch black, and its eyes were scarlet. Its fangs were ferocious, and as it walked, the ground seemed to tremble. Heavenly Mist City, this is it. To be able to make Lord Amethyst Elder personally send me here, it seems like the opponent this time will be very interesting. Just nice. My heart that has ended early due to my vacation needs a place to vent. I hope you won't disappoint me. The pitch-black figure calmly said. In the next instant, he reached out his hand and inserted it into his abdomen. He slowly pulled something out from his abdomen. That thing gradually became visible, and it was actually a huge long spear. That long spear was silver in color, and on it, mysterious runes were drawn all over it. The spearhead was huge, and the spear's neck was slightly sharp. Looking at this spear, it was incomparably domineering. It gave people a huge sense of pressure. The black figure caressed this long spear. Obviously, he really liked this weapon. Grabbing the spear with one hand, he carried it on his shoulder. The black figure reached out his hand and stroked the silver-horned black dog beside him. Then, he walked toward Heavenly Mist City. The city gates of Heavenly Mist City were tightly shut, but his figure did not stop in the slightest. Buzz, the figure of the black figure, did not stop, but continued to move forward. When his figure touched the city walls, he actually melted into the city walls like flowing water. He easily passed through the wall, and did not even need to open the door. That black dog also passed through the wall and entered the city. Horn dog, find the target. We need to finish this quickly. We still have to hurry to the Valley of Gluttony to participate in the Glutton God's banquet. When the time comes, I'll find a piece of divine physique echelon realm spirit beast ribs for you to eat your fill, the black figure calmly said. He carried that shocking long spear which made people's hearts tremble. The sky gradually darkened, leaving behind only the afterglow of the setting sun. When that horned dog received the black figure's order, it instantly gave a low growl, and its figure dashed out. The black figure carried the long spear, taking large strides to catch up. A human and a dog's figure ran under the setting sun. After a long time, a human and a dog stopped in front of the majestic star tower. The horned dog squatted on the spot, sticking out its tongue and panting. The black figure carried a thick long spear, and his expression could not be seen. You horned dog! You grew a horn on your head, And your intelligence is lower than other dogs? This is the Star Tower, why did you bring me here? The black figure carried the long spear, his face speechless. The Star Tower was an important place of the Pill Palace. How could the target he was looking for be here? According to the information given by Amethyst Elder, the target should be staying in a restaurant. But forget it. Since we're here, let's go in for a walk. I heard that this Pill Palace's palace master has a lot of resentment towards our heavenly spring holy land. The black figure lightly laughed, carrying the long spear, planning to walk towards the Star Tower. However, just as he was about to enter the Star Tower, the entire Pill Tower flashed with star-like radiance, causing his figure to be obstructed. Within the Star Tower, many people were startled awake. Luo Danqing furrowed his brows, his eyes flashing as his figure dashed out of the tower. The black figure single-handedly held the god-slaying spear. As expected of the Pill Palace's divine tool, this star power is really annoying. In the next instant, the black figure coldly laughed. Holding the long spear, he swept it horizontally, smashing it towards the Star Tower. The long spear's radiance was dazzling, and in an instant, it became extremely huge. As it smashed over, its momentum was vast. Rumble! A loud sound rang out, and the Star Tower was almost smashed away. Luo Danqing shot out from within, shouting for the black figure to stop. Only then did the black figure stop. Finally willing to come out. This Star Tower is too damn hard. I can't even break it with my spear, the black figure said. The horned dog squatted at the side, hissing as it stuck out its tongue. Who are you? Why are you attacking my Star Tower? The instant Luo Danqing saw the black figure, his heart shuddered as he asked cautiously. I am Heavenly Spring Holy Land, Shadow Demon, Shadow Demon calmly said as he once again lifted the god-slaying spear. An expert of the hidden dragon royal court? Luo Danqing's pupil shrank, a smear of anger appearing on his face. Did this royal court really want to exterminate the Pill Palace? Tell me where the thing that killed Jiaoye is, and I'll spare your life. Otherwise, you know what will happen. Shadow Demon carried the long spear on his shoulder, his words extremely savage. In his eyes, although Luo Danqing's cultivation wasn't weak, it wasn't that strong either. As his words fell, 4 steps of the soul ladder appeared above Shadow Demon's head. That soul ladder seemed to be real, extremely condensed. The terrifying aura caused Luo Danqing's entire body to feel cold. A divine soul realm expert of the hidden dragon royal court who had condensed 4 steps of the soul ladder, and also a terrifying existence that wielded the hidden dragon royal court's divine tool. This kind of existence was enough to crush an ordinary divine soul realm expert who had condensed 5 steps of the soul ladder. The other party was here to find the little chef? It seemed like the little chef. This time, it was really impossible for him to escape. Luo Danqing sighed in his heart. The hidden dragon royal court was indeed tyrannical. Chapter 636. In the dark night, 2 crescent moons hung high in the sky, emitting a clear and cold radiance. The radiance was like a veil sprinkling down, covering the ground, causing the entire ground to become incomparably hazy. The Cloud Mist restaurant, under the cover of the veil, seemed to be emitting a bright radiance. Looking from afar, it had a cold beauty. Rustle. The sound of rubbing rang out. The crushed stones on the ground were stepped on by the soles of feet, giving off a somewhat shattering sound. A pitch-black figure wrapped in a black robe suddenly appeared. Beside this figure, there was a pitch-black dog with a silver horn crouching. The black dog stuck out its tongue, its eyes incomparably scarlet in the dark night. Shadow Demon carried the incomparably huge god-slaying spear, looking at the little restaurant emitting a cold beauty under the moonlight. Is this the restaurant that Luo Danqing, that old man, spoke of? Jiaoye died in the hands of this restaurant's expert? Shadow Demon's entire body was pitch black, and it was basically impossible to see his face. Even his eyes could not be seen. His voice had a bit of magnetism, but within that magnetism there was a bit of sharpness. He narrowed his eyes, looking at the restaurant in the distance, taking in a deep breath. The netherworld creature that the hidden dragon royal court was so concerned about was in that restaurant? This restaurant was rather interesting, actually daring to take in the netherworld creature. The hidden dragon royal court seemed to have a grudge with the netherworld creature. The upper echelons of the royal court had more than once announced that they wanted to hunt and kill the netherworld creature. Many of the holy sons of the royal court had interacted with the netherworld creature, but no one would have thought that this restaurant would actually dare to take in the netherworld creature. How daring! However, it's really annoying for some ordinary netherworld creatures to make such a big fuss. Shadow Demon carried the god-slaying spear on his shoulder as he slowly walked toward the restaurant. Although he said it was annoying, he still had to act, because this was the mission that Amethyst Elder had given him. For this mission, he had returned from his vacation early. So, if he did not ask for some interest, he would be at a disadvantage. Horned dog, go. After walking a step or two, Shadow Demon suddenly realized that the horned dog was still squatting at the same spot with its tongue hanging out. His brows instantly furrowed, and with a kick, he kicked the horned dog's butt, causing it to bark wildly. Striding its paws, it dashed towards the restaurant. Puff, puff, the horned dog leapt high into the air. The moonlight shone down, shining on its body, causing its dog fur to be extremely smooth and glossy. The horned dog's silver horn became even more resplendent. It raised its head, feeling that it was incomparably noble. There was a swoosh. The horned dog directly smashed into the restaurant's bronze door. Out of everyone's expectations, the bronze door actually didn't emit any sound. The horned dog's figure passed through the bronze door blankly, and entered into the restaurant. In the kitchen, Xiao Bai's eyes immediately lit up, and the aura on his body became incomparably dense. It turned its head slightly and looked into the distance through the kitchen. The horned dog's figure landed on the ground, its dog nose snorted, it raised its head, its dog mouth twitched. A noble dog had to maintain its elegance. The horned dog took a step forward, slowly pacing within this restaurant. In the darkness, the horned dog's scarlet eyes were like two candlelight, incomparably clear. Suddenly, the horned dog's figure slightly froze. Its dog head strangely turned, looking towards a direction. Over there was a dark green path understanding tree. That path understanding tree actually had 7 silver patterns, looking rather exquisite. As the leaves swayed, there seemed to be a dense and surging spiritual energy emitting out. Under that tree there was a figure lying on the ground. That was a dog. What the f***ck? A dog. There was actually a dog in this restaurant? The horned dog was stunned, its tongue sticking out. Looking at that fat dog lying on the ground, it snorted out white gas from its nose. He looked at that black dog's fat body, then looked at his own slender and handsome figure, and the dog's head instantly raised up proudly. As expected, this dog is still handsome. This dog is a noble horned dog. Do you see the silver horn on my head? Isn't it very beautiful? Isn't it very resplendent? That was the symbol of a dog's nobility. The horned dog's mouth opened, letting out a low dog bark, as if it was snickering with pride. It strode its dog steps, walking to Black's surroundings, walking a circle around this fat dog. The more it looked, the more it despised it. How could the difference between dogs be so big? The eyes of the Lord Go, who was lying in front of the path understanding tree, suddenly trembled. Those eyes opened, and in that instant, it was as if a light had appeared. The entire restaurant seemed to have lit up at this moment. The arrogant horned dog still raised its head, immersed in the narcissism of a dog's life. If you don't compare, you won't know. Suddenly, that intoxicated horned dog felt its entire body quiver. It was as if a terrifying aura had awoken, instantly wrapping around its body, making it feel as if it had fallen into an ice cave. In that instant, the horned dog's mind became alert, its silver dog horn emitting a sparkling radiance. The radiance was resplendent, blossoming to the extreme. The horned dog's aura suddenly burst forth, sweeping its surroundings in an incomparably tyrannical manner, probing where that dangerous aura was emitting from. However, after sweeping his surroundings, he did not discover anything, and could not help but be a little suspicious. Could it be that it sensed wrongly? What kind of dog are you? Running in the middle of the night to act cool in front of you, the Lord Go? The Lord Go had a speechless expression as he looked at the horned dog that was standing in front of him and acting coquettishly. Its heart was a little muddled. A black dog appeared in the middle of the night, and this black dog was even walking around it. Even the Lord Go felt his entire body tense up. This dog. What did it want to do? The Lord Go's voice that was filled with magnetism caused the horned dog to be slightly stunned. In the next instant, the horned dog seemed to have thought of something. Turning its head, it met the eyes of the Lord Go that were filled with a speechless feeling. This dog could actually speak. The horned dog's scarlet eyes widened, filled with disbelief. The Lord Go slowly crawled up from the ground, the fats on its entire body trembling as it looked at the tall horned dog. Tap tap tap. The fur on the horned dog's entire body stood up, continuously retreating. The silver dog horn emitted a radiance that flickered. Say something. In the middle of the night, are you still going to let a dog sleep? The Lord Go lightly said. The horned dog widened its eyes, its face looking like it was constipated. Speak? You fat dog, do you think that every dog is like you and can speak the human language? The horned dog snorted, instantly puffing out its chest. It suddenly thought of why it had to be so afraid? Just because the other party could speak the human language? Was being able to speak the human language amazing? The horned dog's eyes narrowed, baring its teeth at the Lord Go. The Lord Go's dog mouth twitched, becoming even more speechless. In the middle of the night, a crazy dog ran out, and even acted cool in front of the Lord Go. The Lord Go looked at the horned dog, slowly taking a step forward with its dog paws. Elegant cat steps appeared, and those steps were incomparably enchanting. The horned dog was stunned. Tap tap tap. It continuously retreated a few steps again. With incomparable fear, it stared at the Lord Go who was walking with cat steps. A black dog that could speak the human language and walk with cat steps? What kind of mutant was this? The Lord Go walked with cat steps, quickly arriving in front of the horned dog. The fat on the Lord Go's body shook, raising its head to look at the horned dog. The horned dog's mentality finally recovered, and in the next instant, it opened its mouth and let out a bark. Roar. The horned dog's bark was low and filled with a wave of killing intent. He was very confident that with this roar of his, the fat of this fat dog in front of him would definitely shake 3 times. However, he was wrong. The Lord Go still looked at it with a face of speechlessness. In the next instant, the Lord Go raised its exquisite dog paw. Bang! The dog paw slapped down, and the horned dog was smashed onto the ground with a face of confusion, not knowing what had happened. Struggling to climb up from the ground, anger surged, the killing intent in its eyes exploding. The dog fur on its body became sinister, as if they were steel needles standing on end. Roar. The dog paw slapped the ground, and the horned dog let out a long roar. It opened its dog mouth, and there was a dark energy gathering. That fluctuation was extremely terrifying, and the air seemed to be trembling under this energy fluctuation. The might of the horned dog was so terrifying. However, on the contrary, the Lord Go still had a face of indifference. The dog's mouth twitched, looking at the horned dog that was gathering energy. Raising its exquisite dog paw, it smashed onto the other party's head. With a bang, the horned dog was once again smashed onto the ground, the energy in its mouth dispersing. What the heck? The Lord Go was speechless. The horned dog was terrified. This fat dog was too much. It once again struggled to climb up from the ground. The silver horn on its forehead was dim, and that was because it was frightened. The Lord Go's eyebrows twitched. You horned dog, you actually dare to glare at you, the Lord Go? Bang! Disturbing the Lord Go's sleep in the middle of the night? Bang! Acting cool in front of the Lord Go in the middle of the night? Bang! The Lord Go waved its exquisite dog paw time and time again, smashing the horned dog onto the ground time and time again. The horned dog was stunned. Why was this dog so fierce? When the Lord Go waved its exquisite dog paw again, the horned dog was instantly so frightened that it laid on the ground, rubbing its dog paw. That meaning seemed to be saying, "Brother dog, I was wrong." The Lord Go tilted its head, looking at the horned dog for a moment. In the end, it snorted, and with a bang, it smacked down again. Woo! Look at that little gaze of yours. Are you jealous of the Lord Go body of fat? The horned dog wanted to cry, but it could not cry out. The noble horned dog was actually pressed onto the ground by a black dog that looked after the shop. This was such a miserable thing. It wanted to resist, but it realized that it could not resist at all. It was not the opponent of this black dog at all. This black dog that could only speak human language and walk like a cat was too much. They were all dogs, why was there a need to make things difficult for dogs? The Lord Go's dog mouth smacked a little. As it smacked, it became a little addicted, but it really could not think of any excuse. The Lord Go no longer waved its exquisite dog paw. Instead, it turned around, twisting its butt, and walked like a cat, returning to the path understanding tree to lie down. The horned dog's rubbing action finally stopped. Its eyes were filled with tears. It had finally ended. The horned dog felt that its noble and beautiful silver horn was smacked crooked by that fat dog. Without saying another word, the horned dog opened its dog paw and sped out of the restaurant. A bang sounded out. This horned dog directly smashed onto the door, and its nose was almost crooked from the collision. Motherf asterisk her. It was smashed by the dog paw until it forgot its wall-passing skill. The horned dog wanted to cry, but it did not dare to. It struggled up, and once again smashed onto the door. This time, it activated its skill and rushed out. Once it rushed out of the restaurant, it was as if it rushed out of hell. It was excited, it was happy, its heart was filled with joy. The shadow demon carried the god-slaying spear, and was preparing to pass through the wall into the restaurant, when it was suddenly shocked by the horned dog that frantically ran out. This damn dog! Becoming more and more unreliable. Other than knowing how to show off, what else do you have? The shadow demon looked at the figure of that black dog running wildly, and opened its mouth to scold. Turning its head, it carried the god-slaying spear, and with its head held high and chest puffed out, it passed through the wall and stepped into the restaurant. Chapter 637. Facing the horned dog that was fleeing in panic, the Lord Go did not care in the slightest. It laid back under the path understanding tree, and continued to sleep soundly. Xiao Bai popped his head out from the kitchen, his purple eyes slightly flashing. He raised his big hand, scratching his round head. Buzz! A muffled sound rang out, and a human figure once again passed through the bronze door, appearing in the restaurant. This human figure carried a huge long spear, and on the long spear, there were mysterious patterns drawn all over it. The patterns occasionally flashed with a glossy shine, and a terrifying and oppressive aura circulated on this long spear. Oh, this is the interior of the restaurant? It's rather exquisite and warm, Shadow Demon muttered in a low voice. Such a warm environment, why did the horned dog look like it had seen a ghost? Carrying the long spear, Shadow Demon looked around. His body was pitch black, and in this pitch-black environment, it was as if he was invisible. However, the cold moonlight shone in through the window, causing the interior of the restaurant to be rather bright. Shadow Demon froze. He saw a 7 stripes path understanding tree. This was a good thing. This small restaurant actually planted a 7 stripes path understanding tree. This kind of tree could already be called a spirit tree of the divine realm. Under that tree there was a dog, a black dog. A black dog that opened its eyes and looked at him. Dog? So there was also a dog in the restaurant. Could it be that it was this dog that scared the horned dog away? Why was this dog so awesome? Shadow Demon's gaze shifted, and he saw the huge netherworld ship beside the black dog. The netherworld ship emitted nether energy, causing Shadow Demon to involuntarily narrow his eyes. Nether energy, is it the aura of the netherworld creature? That netherworld creature is hiding in this broken ship? Shadow Demon said. In the next instant, his shoulders shook. Instantly, that god-slaying spear was waved by him. With a boom, he held it with one hand. A terrifying aura filled the air. Since we found the netherworld creature, then let's directly deal with it, Shadow Demon lightly said. However, after he finished speaking, he suddenly felt that the black dog's gaze landed on his body. Puzzled, he looked at that black dog and noticed that the black dog was looking at him as if it was looking at an idiot. What's with the dog's gaze? Why aren't you guys sleeping in the middle of the night? What are you all doing here in the store, posing coquettishly? Do you have nothing better to do? The Lord Go said. The Shadow Fiend was stunned. The next moment, he was horrified. This was actually a talking dog. As expected, such an extraordinary dog definitely had an inseparable factor in the horned dog's panic and escape. It was very possible that the horned dog was scared off by this dog. Shadow Devil took a deep breath and waved the god-slaying spear. With a wave, a terrifying pressure immediately burst forth. You have to look at the owner before you beat the dog. That dog just now was scared away by you? Shadow Devil said coldly. He pointed the spear in his hand at the Lord Go. The Lord Go stood up once more, the fat on his body slightly shaking. I hate it when people point guns at me, Lord Go said. It took an elegant cat-like step, and after 1 or 2 steps, it arrived in front of the spear. Raising its exquisite dog paw, it pressed onto the spear. With a boom, the spear was pressed onto the ground. The terrifying power shocked the Shadow Devil. No matter how much strength he used, he was unable to lift the spear. His Shadow Devil suddenly had a bad feeling in his heart. No wonder that damn dog ran. This fat dog in front of him was really extraordinary. Perhaps this black dog was the creature of the netherworld that had killed Jiaoya, who held the god-slaying bow. Otherwise, there was no way to explain why this dog was so strong. However, he was not Jiaoya. Since this dog was a creature of the netherworld, then, with the god-slaying spear that was even stronger than the god-slaying bow, he had nothing to fear. The energy on the Shadow Devil's body burst forth. True energy surged, and the god-slaying spear seemed to come alive. The patterns on it began to tremble. With a low roar, the true energy on the Shadow Devil's arm spread out like a dragon, coiling up like a chain. A huge force burst forth from the Shadow Devil's arm. The Lord Go calmly looked at the Shadow Devil. In the next instant, looking at the other party's constipated expression, the corners of the Lord Go's mouth instantly curled up. Another joker? The exquisite dog paw raised up, gently patting down. But the long spear fell onto the ground with a boom. The Shadow Devil held his breath, looking at the god-slaying spear on the ground in a daze. His little heart thumped wildly. He did not hold it properly, yes. He definitely did not hold it properly. The Shadow Devil swallowed a mouthful of saliva. With a flick of his foot, he picked up the long spear from the ground. Holding the long spear with one hand, the long spear curled up, and the spear's tip was directly aimed at the Lord Go. Its momentum was ferocious. However, in the next instant the Shadow Devil was dumbfounded. Because something happened that made his hair stand on end. A cracking sound rang out. The god-slaying spear was actually smashed by the black dog's paw, breaking into 2 pieces. What the hell? What happened? The Shadow Devil's entire person was about to explode. Too scary. This was the god-slaying spear, the hidden dragon royal court's heavenly spring holy land, a divine weapon. Not a long spear that could be bought for 1 gold coin by the roadside. How could it be smashed so easily? Whoosh, he finally knew why the horned dog wanted to run. This black dog was really terrifying. Netherworld creature. Could it be that level of netherworld creature? Motherf asterisk cur. I can't beat it. I'll run. Looking at the god-slaying spear that was smashed into 2 pieces, the shadow devil did not say anything else, turning around and running. If he did not run, he would be an idiot. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, bang. Motherf asterisk cur. I was so scared that I forgot my wall-passing skill. The shadow devil crawled up from the ground on his butt, cursing in his heart. He then continued to pass through the wall, taking big strides as he ran away. As the shadow devil of the hidden dragon royal court, the shadow devil should not be afraid. Don't be afraid, just fight. However, even the god-slaying spear was smashed into pieces. What was there to fight? If he did not run, then he would really be even more stupid than the horned dog. How could he be even more stupid than the horned dog? So he had to run. Under the moonlight, a man and a dog spread out their legs, running wildly. That was their lost youth. Lord Go had a speechless face as he looked at that person who was madly running away, yawning. Picking up the god-slaying spear from the ground. After taking a look, he stuffed it into his mouth. Crunch, crunch. That god-slaying spear was chewed into pieces by him, and the broken pieces, scattered in all directions. This taste really can't compare to sweet and sour ribs. Chewing a few mouthfuls of the god-slaying spear's pieces, Lord Go pushed the remaining pieces away with a face of disdain, waving his hand towards Xiao Bai, whose head popped out, flashing with purple eyes. Xiao Bai came over with a face of confusion. After Lord Go pointed at the pieces of the god-slaying spear on the ground, he then turned around and returned under the path understanding tree. After a while, snoring sounds rang out. He really hoped that the sun would rise earlier, so that he could eat the fragrant sweet and sour ribs, Lord Go muttered in his heart, and as he muttered, he fell into a deep sleep. Shadow Demon spread his legs and madly ran for dozens of miles, before clutching his heart and leaning against the wall, panting. In the distance, the horned dog was also leaning against the wall with a limp face, sticking out its tongue, its face filled with despair and grief. It looked at Shadow Demon, who was clutching his heart, and snorted as if saying, "You also ran out alive." Shadow Demon's face was covered in the shadows, making it impossible for people to see his appearance clearly. However, it was very obvious that he also felt rather fortunate. As the experts of the Hidden Dragon Royal Court, their knowledge of the netherworld creatures was much more than ordinary disciples like Jiaoya. Although the netherworld creatures were collectively called the netherworld creatures, these creatures were strictly differentiated, and the hierarchy was very strict, just like the Hidden Dragon Continent's strength hierarchy. The Divine Realm was divided into the Divine Physique Realm and the Divine Soul Realm, and the netherworld creatures similarly had rank. Before coming, Shadow Demon thought that he was only facing an ordinary spirit realm netherworld creature, but he never thought that he would meet this black dog, which was so terrifying that it made him suffocate. Even the god-slaying spear was smashed into pieces. Without a doubt, to be able to smash the god-slaying spear into pieces so easily, this netherworld creature's strength might have already reached the emptiness realm, which was the same level as the saint sons and saintesses of the Hidden Dragon Royal Court's 7 great sages, which was an existence that had condensed 5 steps of the soul ladder and above in the divine soul realm. As for the even higher level great emptiness realm, Shadow Demon thought for a while, there shouldn't be such an existence appearing in the Hidden Dragon Continent. Horned dog, you say, what should we do now? This time's mission can be considered a failure. Shadow Demon leaned against the wall, sitting down on his butt, sitting beside that horned dog as he said. The horned dog squinted its eyes and snorted. We didn't do anything, and the god-slaying spear was smashed into pieces. If we go back like this, I'll be caught by that bastard Amethyst Elder and drowned in a pig cage. Shadow Demon said, his words filled with sorrow. Taking an early vacation, originally thought that it would be an easy mission, but in the end they actually met an emptiness netherworld creature. This kind of mission shouldn't be called on him, it should be called on a Saint Sun level existence. Did Amethyst Elder not see eye to eye with him, and wanted to set a trap for him to drown in a pig cage? Simply too much. The more Shadow Demon thought about it, the more his liver hurt. In the end, he angrily snorted, slamming his palm on the ground, causing the ground to crack. Damn it! Horn Dog, let's run. Don't return to the royal court, wait for this storm to pass, then we'll go back. Just say that we fought 300 rounds with this netherworld creature, and we were heavily injured, so we went to hide and recover, Shadow Demon seriously analyzed. The horned dog stuck out its tongue at the side, seriously nodding its head. What you said makes sense. This dog raised both of its paws in agreement. A man and a dog looked at each other, and in the next instant, they madly dashed out, passing through the walls, leaving Heavenly Mist City, wandering the world. It could be imagined that this news might take a long time to spread back to the Hidden Dragon Royal Court. At least in this period of time. The Cloud Mist restaurant should be very peaceful. The morning sun shone down. Bufang opened his eyes, first going to the bathroom to wash up, then walking down the stairs. Walking to the entrance of the stairs, he suddenly froze, turning his head to look in confusion, seeing Xiao Bai lying flat on the floor of the restaurant. What's going on? Why is Xiao Bai lying on the floor sleeping in broad daylight? Bufang was a little suspicious. In the restaurant, Yang Meiji also looked at Bufang with an innocent face, indicating that she also did not know what had happened. And Lord Go and Yu, these two foodies, were sitting in front of the table, looking at Bufang with a face full of expectation. Bufang blinked his eyes, looking at Xiao Bai. And at this time, the system's solemn and serious voice suddenly rang out in his mind. Chapter 638. Xiao Bai accidentally ate the Hidden Dragon Royal Court's God-slaying tool. Now, the path of evolution has been opened. The time of evolution is uncertain. In a short time, Xiao Bai will fall into a deep sleep. Host, don't worry. The system's serious voice echoed in Bufang's head, making Bufang dumbstruck. Indeed. Did Xiao Bai eat something bad? The path of evolution had been opened. The time of evolution was uncertain. Did the system mean that no one knew when Xiao Bai would wake up? Bufang rubbed his chin, furrowing his brows. According to the system, the clothes-stripping demon Xiao Bai wouldn't appear in a short time. Bufang sighed, his eyes twinkling. After the system's voice disappeared, Xiao Bai, who was lying on the ground, started to become transparent at a speed visible to the naked eye. Then, he gradually disappeared from people's sight. Yang Meiji looked at the disappearing little white in shock. What was going on? What did Bufang do? How did such a huge lump of metal disappear just like that? When Xiao Bai disappeared, Xiaopi, who had been lying on Xiao Bai's head, landed on the ground. It rolled its eyes, looking puzzled. It didn't seem to know where Xiao Bai had gone. Picking up Xiaopi and placing it on his shoulder, Bufang looked at Yang Meiji. Why don't you go to the kitchen to practice your knife skills? Bufang's voice was a little serious. Yang Meiji's body tensed. Bufang's tone reminded her of the alchemy teacher who had taught her before. The corners of Bufang's mouth rose as he watched Yang Meiji enter the kitchen. He walked to the bronze door and opened it. Instantly, the sunlight shone in, making people feel better. Today's weather wasn't bad. After opening the door, a cool morning breeze blew in from outside, causing one to involuntarily close their eyes and take a deep breath. After returning to the kitchen, Bufang began to cook the breakfast prepared for Blackie and Yu, sweet and sour ribs and dragon blood rice. Yang Meiji greedily sniffed the fragrance in the air. Looking at the freshly cooked sweet and sour ribs, she couldn't help but swallow her saliva. He served the sweet and sour ribs and dragon blood rice to the man and the dog. Bufang suddenly froze. This was because he discovered that there were two figures rushing in from outside the door. Their speed was incomparably fast. These were two rather graceful figures. "Owner Bu, good morning." Nangong Wan removed the veil covering her beautiful face and greeted Bufang with a smile. The other person was the voluptuous alchemist sorceress and Sheng. This woman's figure was truly terrifying. Her chest was towering and constantly jiggling. At this moment, she looked at Bufang with an enchanting smile and said, "Owner Bu, good morning." Bufang tilted his head, a trace of doubt appearing on his face. What were these two women trying to do? Why were they looking at him with such strange eyes? From afar, Nangong Wuk leisurely walked in. As soon as he entered the restaurant, Nangong Wuk revealed a mischievous smile at Bufang. That smile made Bufang's hair stand on end. Before Bufang could retract his gaze from Nangong Wuk, Nangong Wan and Sorceress and Xing went to Bufang's side. Bufang was startled. These two women wanted to cause trouble? "Owner Bu, you've worked hard. Come, sit down and have a good rest." Sorceress and Xing, with a face full of smiles, pulled Bufang's arm and pressed him down. Bufang furrowed his eyebrows. From afar, Lord Go and you were eating as they secretly observed everything that was happening. It seemed interesting. Nangong Wuk had a mischievous smile on his face as he found a seat and sat down. He crossed his legs and seemed to be interested in watching Bufang make a fool of himself. Nangong Wan's beautiful face was filled with seriousness as she looked at Bufang. Sorceress and Xing also became serious as she stared at Bufang. "Say it. What do you want?" Bufang glanced at the two women and said calmly. Sorceress and Xing and Nangong Wan looked at each other. They seemed to see the sparks in each other's eyes. In the next instant, Nangong Wan took a deep breath. She looked at Bufang and said, "Owner Bu, I heard that you are looking for apprentice chef. What do you think of me?" When these words came out, Bufang didn't know how to react. He didn't think that these two women would come to find him so early in the morning just for this matter. Sorceress and Xing blinked her eyes, and a hopeful look appeared in her eyes. Were these two female apprentices that came to his doorstep? The corners of Bufang's mouth slightly twitched. It was a pity that he only had one quota left. He didn't know which of these two women was more suitable. If someone wanted to be his apprentice, Bufang would naturally welcome them. However, he still had to judge each other's culinary talent. "There is still one quota left. You two can only choose one," Bufang said. As soon as he said that, Bufang felt the atmosphere in the restaurant change dramatically. It seemed to have become somewhat hostile and confrontational. Nangong Wan and Sorceress and Xing looked at each other. Their eyes were filled with light. "Okay, there is only one quota. How about this, the two of you go back and cook a dish each. Bring it to me tomorrow for me to taste." Bufang glanced at Nangong Wan and Sorceress and Xing, then said, "I will consider all aspects to choose who will become my apprentice." Sorceress and Xing and Nangong Wan nodded their heads seriously. Was this the test that Owner Bu gave them? Since it was a test, they would definitely do their best. This was a battle between women. Sparks appeared in their eyes. They both snorted and found a place to sit down. Then, they began to order their dishes. In the distance, Nangong Wuk grinned. Night fell. Nangong Mansion. In the kitchen, the lights were still on. Outside the kitchen, there were many maids and servants. They curiously looked into the kitchen and whispered to each other. Nangong Wuk leaned against a stone pillar and looked helplessly in the direction of the kitchen. Nangong Wan had been in the kitchen for a whole night. He had no idea what she was doing. He had never seen Owner Bu cook a dish for so long. What was that girl doing? Rumble! A muffled sound rang out. The group of servants outside the door sucked in a breath of cold air and took several steps back. Nangong Wuk's mouth twitched. This little sister of mine, why is she so amusing? Nangong Wuk shook his head and quietly approached the kitchen. He was suddenly curious about what was happening in the kitchen. However, before he could get close, the kitchen door opened. It was as if a green smoke was drifting out of the kitchen. It was incomparably hazy. Within the haze, a graceful figure slowly appeared. Nangong Wook widened his eyes. The maids and servants also widened their eyes. In the next moment, Nangong Wan's figure gradually became clear. She was holding a steaming hot dish in her hands. She really cooked it? Looking at Nangong Wan, who seemed to have turned into a Hua cat, everyone was stunned. Their little miss had never done any chores before. How did she really manage to cook a dish? Impressive. Nangong Wan seemed to be a little proud. She raised her nose and looked at Nangong Wook. Brother, come and have a taste of your sister's cooking. Nangong Wook's eyes widened and his hair stood on end. This girl actually called him brother. Strange. Star Tower. As a talented alchemist of the younger generation, Sorceress Shing had her own position in the Star Tower. It was a secret room that belonged to Sorceress Shing. The door of the secret room was tightly shut and no sound could be heard. Outside the door, Mu Bai and Jiang Ling stared at each other. The two of them were invited by Sorceress Shing in advance. They did not know what was going on. After a long time, just as the two of them were about to leave, the door of the secret room finally opened slowly. The secret room was lit up and the aroma of a dish filled the air. Mu Bai and Jiang Ling were stunned. Sister, this is an alchemist. Why did you use it to cook? If Grandmaster Gu he knew about this, he would be so angry that he would vomit blood. Was this girl planning to abandon alchemy and become a chef? Come, have a taste of this lady's cooking. Sorceress Shing's hair was scattered as she looked at Mu Bai and Jiang Ling. This gaze. Mu Bai and Jiang Ling could not help but shiver. They seemed to have a bad premonition in their hearts. The next day, Cloud Mist Restaurant. Bu Fong blinked his eyes as he looked at Nangong Wan and Sorceress Shing who were standing in front of him. Today, Nangong Wook was absent. Bu Fong sat on his seat with an indifferent expression. Sorceress Shing and Nangong Wan seemed to be a little uneasy as they looked at Bu Fong from time to time. On the table in front of Bu Fong there were two dishes. In terms of appearance, the two dishes could be said to be equally matched. Bu Fong looked at the dishes and smacked his lip. The system had already judged Nangong Wan and Sorceress Shing's culinary talent. In terms of culinary talent, Sorceress Shing was superior. Although Nangong Wan's culinary talent wasn't bad, it was still lacking when compared to Sorceress Shing. However, Bu Fong was still willing to give them a fair chance to compete. Thus, Bu Fong picked up his chopsticks and tapped them on the table. Then, he opened them and picked up Nangong Wan's dish. This time, Nangong Wan was cooking red braised meat. Although the size of the meat was different, the color of the dish was very bright. The chopsticks landed and picked up the meat. Bu Fong's brows slightly twitched. This piece of meat was cooked too well. With just one pick, Bu Fong was able to determine the flaws in this dish. Placing the red braised meat into his mouth, Bu Fong chewed a few times. The more he chewed, the more his brows furrowed. This texture, this taste, it was poisonous. Bu Fong's face slightly twitched. He looked at Nangong Wan expressionlessly. Tell me, last night did you let Nangong Wook taste your dish? He definitely let Nangong Wook taste her dish. Otherwise, why would Nangong Wook not appear today? This red braised meat could only be described as salty to the heavens. After rinsing his mouth with the Heavenly Alps Spirit Spring water, Bu Fong shifted his gaze to Sorceress Shing's dish. Looking at it, Bu Fong once again raised his brows. These two women really had the ambition to fly in the culinary world. One chose to cook red braised meat, while the other chose to cook sweet and sour ribs. These two dishes were not easy to cook. Looking at Sorceress Shing's dish, Bu Fong pursed his lips. He reached out with his chopsticks and picked up a piece of meat. Chapter 639. In the end, the person Bu Fong chose was Sorceress Shing. The system's judgment of one's cooking talent was quite accurate. Although Sorceress Shing's sweet and sour ribs wasn't much better than Nangong Wan's red braised meat, The slight difference was enough to crush her. Nangong Wan pouted, feeling a little sad as she left Bufang's restaurant. Of course, before she left, she ordered a portion of Bufang's red braised meat to try. After eating Bufang's red braised meat, Nangong Wan took a bite of the red braised meat she had cooked herself, and she immediately spat it out. What kind of thing was that? How could the difference be so huge? Sorceress Enching was so happy. Her heart was filled with happiness, and her voluptuous figure and towering breasts were trembling. Finally, she could learn how to cook from Onerbu. In the future, she could cook her own dishes and eat as much as she wanted. Her gluttonous heart seemed to finally be satisfied. Bufang looked at the overjoyed sorceress Enching, then slowly stood up and said, "Since you're already an apprentice chef, come in with me." Sorceress Enching was bewildered. In the next instant, her eyes shone brightly. Come in? Could it be Onerbu's secret kitchen? The smile on Enching's face became wider, and her beautiful face was covered with a layer of red. She followed closely behind Bufang, entering the kitchen. As soon as she entered the kitchen, Sorceress Enching was stunned. That dazzling array of equipment made Enching's eyes a little dazzled. That bright and clean kitchen was filled with a faint aroma. It was beyond Sorceress Enching's expectations. It was completely different from the kitchen she had imagined. In the distance, Yang Meiji, who was practicing her knife skills, was also stunned. She raised her head and saw Sorceress Enching. The two of them stared at each other. In the next instant, Yang Meiji suddenly became happy. "Missin, you've also become Onerbu's apprentice? That's great," said Yang Meiji. Bufang placed his hands behind his back and walked to the stove. He looked at Enching, who was standing at the door in a daze, and said, "The two of you will be my chef apprentices in the Cloud Mist restaurant. You two will follow me and practice cooking. In the future, the responsibility of running the Cloud Mist restaurant will be handed over to you." Yang Meiji and Enching were both stunned. In the distant southern region, there is still a restaurant that belongs to me. There are two of my chef apprentices in that restaurant. They should be your senior brothers and sisters. In the future, if there is a chance, you can get to know each other. Of course, their current culinary skills are definitely much better than yours. So, work hard. There's a restaurant in the southern region? Yang Meiji and Enching looked at each other and were dumbfounded. This was a secret that they had never known before. Rumble. Suddenly, under the shocked gazes of Yang Meiji and Enching, the kitchen suddenly trembled. In the kitchen, two small stoves appeared. The small stoves were carved from the same mold as the big stove. The sudden appearance of these stoves made Yang Meiji and Enching feel very magical. "These two stoves belong to you two from now on. You two choose a stove and continue practicing your knife skills," said Bufang. After saying that, Bufang turned around and started to cook the dishes that the diners had ordered. That dazzling cooking method caused Enching to stare in a daze. Yang Meiji pulled Enching, who was still in a daze, and brought her to the stove. Both stoves had a pitch-black kitchen knife placed on them. "Onerbu wants us to practice our knife skills. He wants us to cut carrots. Practice well. If you don't know how to, ask me," Yang Meiji said. After saying that, she turned around and went to her own stove to practice her knife skills. "Cut carrots? You can practice knife skills like this?" Sorceress Enching shook her big chest. She reached out her hand and grabbed the pitch-black kitchen knife. In the next moment, she used all her strength and realized that she couldn't pick up the knife. What the hell? Enching was in a daze. True energy surged, and only then did she lift the knife. However, she could clearly feel that her true energy was being rapidly absorbed by the knife. How could she practice her knife skills like this? In just a short while, the true energy in her body would be depleted. She turned her head and looked at Yang Meiji. She realized that Yang Meiji was cutting the carrots with ease. Wasn't there something strange about her knife? Enching clenched her teeth. She held the knife and started to cut the carrot. Night fell. The store was finally closed for the day. Sorceress and Xing dragged her exhausted body out of the restaurant. She was really tired. Her hands felt like they didn't belong to her anymore. The true energy in her body didn't last long before disappearing. Then, she could only rely on brute force to lift the heavy knife to cut the carrot. It turned out that practicing cooking skills wasn't that easy. In the following days, Sorceress and Xing and Yang Meiji received Bufang's knife skills training. Just like them, Bufang also practiced his knife skills every day. Once again, Xing saw Bufang practicing his knife skills. His movements were as smooth as flowing water, and Xing was dumbfounded. Once again, she felt the gap between her and Bufang's culinary skills, which was like a heavenly moat. The continuous and boring knife skills training made Xing feel a little tired. This was different from the scene of tasting countless delicacies that she had imagined. During these days, Bufang still didn't teach them how to cook. He only let them practice their knife skills to make up for their foundation. Knife skills were the foundation of every chef. Naturally, they had to be trained well. On this day, Bufang pulled a chair and lay comfortably on it. He squinted his eyes and felt the warm sunlight shining on him. The temperature gradually dropped, and it was getting chilly. The weather was turning into late autumn. You held a cup of sour plum juice and pulled a chair to sit beside Bufang. She squinted her eyes and drank happily. This woman seemed to be addicted to sour plum juice. Lord Go was still lying under the path understanding tree, sleeping soundly. The vigorous energy that he exhaled filled the path understanding tree, causing the path understanding tree to evolve unknowingly. From the original 5 stripes path understanding tree to the current 7 stripes path understanding tree, it was really surprising. Suddenly, Bufang, who was lying on the chair, opened his eyes. That was because in his mind, he had received another temporary mission. This temporary mission made Bufang's brows twitch involuntarily. Temporary mission. Please go to the Sunset Lake in the Valley of Gluttony to catch the ingredient, the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish, and cook the dish paper-wrapped fish. After cooking the dish, you will be qualified to advance. Temporary mission reward. Wine. Drunk Immortal Brewing Method. This temporary mission came so suddenly that it was out of Bufang's expectation. Moreover, the content of this temporary mission made Bufang slightly dazed. Go to the Valley of Gluttony? He didn't expect that the location of this mission would be in the Valley of Gluttony. Moreover, he was going to the Valley of Gluttony to catch the ingredient, the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish. If the system didn't remind him, Bufang would have almost forgotten about the paper-wrapped fish. It seemed that he had to carefully study how to cook the paper-wrapped fish. Perhaps if he used the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish, it would be more difficult. As a dish that was qualified to advance, the difficulty was naturally not small. Bufang stood up from his seat and stretched his body. The number of diners had decreased. It seemed that the business for the day was about to end. Pulling the chair back to its original position, Bufang turned around and returned to the kitchen. As soon as he entered the kitchen, Sorceress and Xing, who was holding a kitchen knife and chatting with Yang Meiji, was instantly startled. She hurriedly returned to her stove and continued to practice her knife skills. She even gave Bufang a standard smile when he entered the kitchen. "Oh right, your knife skills practice is about to end. I might have to go on a long trip soon, so don't slack off on your knife skills practice. When I return, I will test your knife skills. The one who fails the test will be punished." Bufang stood in front of his stove, fiddling with the knife as he said. Sorceress and Xing and Yang Meiji were both stunned. When they heard that the knife skills practice was about to end, they revealed expressions of excitement. However, when they heard that their knife skills would be tested and that the one who lost would be punished, they revealed expressions of confusion. Bufang didn't care about their expressions. He frowned and hesitated in front of the stove for a while. He was thinking and reading the cooking method of the paper-wrapped fish in his mind. Next, he would try to cook the paper-wrapped fish. After all, this dish was related to his future advancement. The paper-wrapped fish was actually a dish that wasn't difficult, but it wasn't easy either. Bufang stood in front of the stove. Shortly, green smoke twirled around his hand, and the dragon bone kitchen knife appeared in his hand. Yang Meiji and Ensheng, who were in the kitchen, seemed to hear a dragon roar. Then, in front of their eyes, Bufang took out different ingredients. Ensheng and Yang Meiji had never seen these ingredients before. The two of them were instantly surprised. Could it be that owner Bu wanted to cook a new dish? First, Bufang squatted down and took out a lively fat fish from the cupboard. This fat fish's meat was fat and tender, so it was an excellent ingredient. Besides the fat fish, Bufang also prepared many spirit herbs and spirit fruit. Rich spiritual energy immediately permeated the kitchen. Besides these ingredients, Bufang also took out some things that Ensheng and Yang Meiji had never seen before. Bufang walked to a corner of the kitchen, where there was a cupboard. Opening the cupboard, Yang Meiji and Ensheng immediately looked over. What they saw made them suck in a breath of cold air. In that cupboard, a giant egg was quietly placed. That egg seemed to have spirit energy circulating around it, and a majestic pressure spread out. That was a phoenix egg. Owner Bu actually had a phoenix egg in his collection. However, this time, Bufang didn't take out the phoenix egg. Instead, he took out a jar of white jade wine. Placing the wine jar on the stove, Bufang took out the most important thing to cook the paper-wrapped fish, which was the inextinguishable paper that the system had prepared for Bufang. After these preparations were done, Bufang excitedly cooked the paper-wrapped fish. He twirled the kitchen knife, twirling it in his hand. With a light flick, the fat fish was sent flying. Chapter 640. Yang Meiji and Ensheng raised their heads with their mouths agape. They watched in astonishment as Bufang flicked the fat fish into the air. The fat fish's body swayed in the air. Its shining scales reflected the light, which was quite dazzling. With a twist of the dragon bone kitchen knife, under the astonished gazes of the two, a blade light flashed past. It was so fast that it was hard for the naked eye to follow it. The scales on the body of the plump fish were quickly cut off and scattered in all directions like the petals of a flower. Under the influence of inertia, the fat fish fell down and was caught by Bufang's kitchen knife. Then, he exerted his strength once more and floated up once more, floating in the air. His body turned to the side, and the kitchen knife slashed horizontally. In an instant, the sky was filled with fish scales. With a thud, the fish, which had been stripped of its scales, fell on the stove, opening its mouth. Yang Meiji and Ensheng were dazzled by Bufang's skill. They were no longer newbies in knife skills. Looking at Bufang's skill, they were shocked. They didn't know that knife skills could be used like this. It was too beautiful. Bufang's finger flicked. Instantly, the kitchen knife spun in his hand. He pressed down on the fat fish, and the dragon bone kitchen knife slashed horizontally. With a swishing sound, the fish fillet was directly cut off from one side of the fish. He did the same with the other side. Soon, the fat fish was only left with the fish's head, which was connected to the fish's body. Moving the fish's body away, Bufang began to meticulously process the fish fillet. First, Bufang patted the fish fillet with the kitchen knife. A moment later, his fingers swiftly stretched out, pulling out the fish bones from the fish fillet. After dealing with the fish bones, Bufang began the next step. He pressed down on the fish fillet, and the dragon bone kitchen knife once again slashed horizontally. This time, he carefully cut horizontally, completely separating the fish skin from the fish fillet. The fish meat was fresh and tender, and the fish skin was smooth and tender. Bufang separated them, choosing the fish meat instead of the fish skin. He placed the fish meat on the blue and white porcelain plate, waiting to be processed. A moment later, he began to process the other ingredient. He took out a blood-colored spirit fruit. The spirit energy on this spirit fruit was very abundant. With a turn of the kitchen knife, the spirit fruit was cut into slices. As for the other ingredients, He cut them into thin shreds and placed them on a plate. He collected the juices of the other spirit fruits for later use. He lit the fire, heated the wok, and poured in the oil. A faint warmth and sizzling sound rang out. Bufang mixed some minced spirit beast meat with some spirit herbs and stir-fried them, causing the fragrance to spread out. After stir-frying, he took it out of the wok and poured it into the prepared plate. In this way, all the ingredients needed for the paper-wrapped fish were prepared, and the next step was the final processing. He took out a white, translucent piece of paper, which was still glowing with a dazzling light. This paper was extraordinary. There seemed to be a unique aura emanating from it, making people feel that it was very magical. After using the dragon bone kitchen knife to process the paper into the shape of a heart, the next step was to wrap the meat. Spreading the paper flat, he took the fat fish meat with the skin removed. First, he placed the stir-fried spirit beast meat and spirit herbs on top of the indestructible paper, then he placed the fish steak on top of it. Then, he placed the cut spirit herbs on top of the fish steak, covering it completely. After that, Bufang seemed to suddenly think of something. He walked out of the kitchen and came to the restaurant. He stopped in front of the Path Understanding tree and looked at Blackie, who was lying under the tree, snoring loudly. The corners of his mouth twitched. Reaching out, he plucked 2 Path Understanding leaves and returned to the kitchen. After washing the Path Understanding leaves, he covered the cut spirit herbs with them. Taking the white jade porcelain jar, he patted off the seal. Instantly, a rich wine aroma spread out from the white jade porcelain jar. The wine aroma was incomparably rich. This was the Frost Blaze Path Understanding brew, which was brewed by Bufang recently. It was brewed with the 7 stripes Path Understanding fruit in the restaurant. The wine aroma was extraordinary, and its fragrance spread out from 10 miles away. However, this time, he took out this wine to cook. Pouring out a small cup, the clear wine in the cup constantly emitted an intoxicating wine aroma. Yang Meiji and Sorceress and Sheng were a little intoxicated, deeply inhaling the wine aroma. As they breathed in this wine aroma, they became a little dazed. It was really fragrant. How could there be such a fragrant wine? They had never seen Owner Bu take out this kind of wine. Yang Meiji and Sheng couldn't help but swallow their saliva, their hearts aching. This kind of wine was actually used to cook dishes. This Owner Bu was recklessly wasting God's gift. Of course, Bufang naturally didn't care about their expressions. After evenly sprinkling a cup of wine on the fish meat, Bufang prepared to wrap it in paper. This was the most important step. He took out the prepared egg white, smeared some of it on the edge of the indestructible paper, and began to wrap the meat. Wrapping the indestructible paper inch by inch, he repeated it twice, making it completely sealed. Just like that, a cute paper bag appeared. Yang Meiji and Sheng were a little dazed when they saw it. What kind of plaything was this? Could this thing be eaten? Why would he wrap the fish meat in paper? Was it to fry the paper? But could paper really be eaten? Owner Bu's new dish was really magical. Bufang seemed to have sensed the astonishment of the 2 people behind him. He glanced at them from the corner of his eyes, and the corners of his mouth curled up, revealing a mysterious smile. Then, he said, "Why aren't you guys practicing your knife skills? I still need to take the test." Yang Meiji and Sheng were instantly bewildered. They hurriedly returned to their respective stoves and began to practice their knife skills. Bufang didn't pay attention to the 2 of them. He carefully picked up the fish meat wrapped in indestructible paper, walked to a corner of the kitchen, opened the bronze oven, and placed the wrapped fish meat into the depths of the oven. The temperature was adjusted. Bufang gently exhaled. At this step, the paper-wrapped fish was basically completed. Shaking his hands to get rid of the water stains on them, Bufang clasped his hands, looking at the 2 of them. This made Yang Meiji and Sheng feel a lot of pressure. However, they were also surprised. They were really curious about what the bronze cabinet Bufang used was. Owner Bu just needs to put the things that he has processed into it? Could it be eaten after a while? Could it be that there was some kind of burning array engraved in the oven that could process the ingredients? Owner Bu's cooking tools were really advanced. After a long time, Bu Fong walked into the restaurant. He opened the oven and took out the paper-wrapped fish that was being roasted. The paper-wrapped fish was a little golden, and the paper bag was bulging. After Bu Fong made a small cut on it, the aroma of meat wafted out. However, Bu Fong knew that it wasn't done yet. He put the paper-wrapped fish back into the oven. This time, it didn't take long to roast it. Shortly after, Bu Fong stopped the flame of the oven. He took out the paper-wrapped fish. He placed the golden paper-wrapped fish on a blue and white porcelain plate. The paper-wrapped fish was still emitting hot steam. Yang Meiji and Ensheng had already come over curiously. They looked at the bulging paper bag in surprise. This thing was also a dish? Owner Bu, how do you eat this thing? As a foodie, Ensheng was really curious. Bu Fong indifferently looked at Ensheng. He didn't answer her question. Instead, his hand turned, and the dragon bone kitchen knife appeared. He gently used the dragon bone kitchen knife to cut the paper-wrapped fish, and the bulging paper bag was cut open. Instantly, steaming hot steam surged out of the paper bag. Bu Fong raised his hand, and instantly, the wine jar containing the Frost Blaze Path Understanding brew appeared in his hand. He poured the clear wine into it. Sizzling sounds resounded, and white steam spread out. A thick aroma instantly spread out, filling the tip of Bu Fong's nose. Bu Fong couldn't help but squint his eyes. Smells so good. There's the aroma of wine and meat. There's also a unique aroma. It seems like it clears people's minds. And Sheng and Yang Meiji couldn't help but squint their eyes. They were intoxicated by the aroma, unable to extricate themselves. Bu Fong opened the paper bag, instantly revealing the fish inside. The fish was already cooked, and the wine was boiling, causing the fish to tremble slightly. The spirit herbs on it were like blooming flowers. It was too beautiful to behold. This was a dish with great ornamental value. Moreover, that aroma simply made people unable to extricate themselves. Come and have a taste. Bu Fong looked at the two people who seemed to be about to ascend to the heavens. He first took out a pair of chopsticks. Ignoring the two people, he directly picked up a piece of fish. The fish was fresh and tender. Under the illumination of the light, it seemed to be reflecting brilliance. The lines on it seemed to be very obvious. Bringing it to his nose and sniffing, the aroma of the fish and the aroma of the Frost Blaze Path Understanding brew instantly rushed into his nose. It made Bu Fong involuntarily take in a deep breath. It smells pretty good. The corners of Bu Fong's mouth curled up. Shoving the fish into his mouth, the soft and tender fish instantly melted like flowing water. There was actually a mellow aroma of the wine, which filled his mouth and made his entire body sink. His mouth chewed, but it wasn't the fish that he was chewing. Instead, it was the aroma of the wine and the fish mixed together. 2 words, delicious. Yang Meiji and Ensheng couldn't wait any longer. Looking at Bu Fong's contented appearance, the two of them also reached out their chopsticks, each picking up a piece of fish and shoving it into their mouths. It smells so good. Ensheng was so excited that her beautiful face turned red. Her eyes were filled with excitement, and her towering bosom shook vigorously. Yang Meiji was also intoxicated. It was the first time she had eaten such delicious fish. It was as though she could feel the feeling of the fish swimming in the water. It was really delicious. It was as though they had smelled the unique aroma wafting out from the kitchen. In the restaurant, Yu was shouting Bu Fong's name loudly. The corners of Bu Fong's mouth curled up. Holding the paper-wrapped fish, he walked out of the kitchen and into the restaurant. Lord Go opened his eyes, staring at the paper-wrapped fish. As for Yu, she couldn't wait to sit on the chair. This foodie girl. Bu Fong shook his head, and the corners of his mouth curled up. Looking at Yu, who was eating the paper-wrapped fish with gusto, his heart couldn't help but move. This time, the grade of the fish he had chosen for the paper-wrapped fish wasn't good enough. It seemed like it was really time for him to make a trip to the Valley of Gluttony. Even if it was for the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish in the Valley of Gluttony, he had to make a trip there, for the more delicious paper-wrapped fish. Chapter 641. You ate happily, and a blush appeared on her fair face. She opened her red lips and let out a breath. This paper-wrapped fish was really delicious, and it had a unique and alluring aroma. She was unable to extricate herself from it. She imitated Bufang, curling up on the chair. She crossed her fair and slender legs, exuding a different kind of temptation. Yang Meiji and Enxing also had a lazy look on their faces. The rich wine aroma of the paper-wrapped fish made the two of them a little intoxicated. Bufang clasped his hands behind his back as he paced around the restaurant. He stopped and looked at you and the other two, then said, "All right, Enxing, you should go back now. Remember to come to the store early tomorrow to practice your knife skills." Sorceress Enxing was very lazy. She raised her fair hand and waved at Bufang, her face full of intoxication. After sending off Sorceress Enxing, you also climbed back into the netherworld ship to sleep. It was unknown when Yang Meiji also went upstairs, but the restaurant suddenly became quiet. Bufang glanced at the restaurant indifferently, then turned around and stepped into the kitchen. The morning sun shone through the window, and it was warm, dispelling the chill of autumn. Bufang got out of bed and walked to the window. He put on the vermilion robe, stretched, and yawned. Today, he prepared to go to the Valley of Gluttony. Whether it was for the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish or for the temporary mission, he had to go. He knew both Wen Rinshou and Zhou Tong. Both of their culinary skills had surprised him. Both of them came from the Valley of Gluttony, which was said to be the holy land of chefs in the hidden dragon continent. There were many chefs there. The holy land of chefs. As someone who wanted to stand at the top of the food chain in the fantasy world, how could Bufang not go there? However, before going, Bufang had to raise his condition to its peak. Without thinking, he knew that this trip to the Valley of Gluttony would not be easy. He might even have to experience a chef's challenge. Naturally, the danger of a chef's challenge was extraordinary. With a thought from Bufang, a knife cabinet that seemed to be made of crystal appeared in front of him. A kitchen knife that looked like an ice crystal lay quietly in the knife cabinet. A faint cold air appeared on the blade of the knife. This was the consequence of losing a chef's challenge. His kitchen knife would be taken away, and he would lose his right to cook. Bufang understood clearly that once he entered the Valley of Gluttony, a chef's challenge would be unavoidable. Not just a chef's challenge, but a real battle might happen. Therefore, his trip this time was really quite dangerous. But so what if it was dangerous? Bufang stretched out his hand and moved his fingers slightly. He was fearless. He walked out of the room and went to the kitchen on the first floor. Inside the kitchen, Enxing and Yang Meiji had already started their daily knife skills training. The two of them seemed to have been stimulated by Bufang's knife skills yesterday, so they were especially motivated to train today. They imagined that one day, they would be able to show off their dazzling knife skills like Bufang. How cool would that be? In the next few days, I might not be in the restaurant, but you guys still have to practice your knife skills well. Don't slack off just because I'm not here. You guys have to remember that the practice of cooking is the same as any other practice. Heaven rewards the diligent. Only when you put in the effort will you be rewarded, Bufang said solemnly. Yang Meiji and Enxing were instantly stunned. Owner Bu was going to leave the restaurant? The two of them took a deep breath and did not think too much about it. They just nodded solemnly. Heaven rewards the diligent. Who didn't know that? Yang Meiji and Enxing were originally alchemists. They actually understood the concept of heaven rewarding the diligent. Alchemists were also a profession that required talent. However, there were many people with talent, and not everyone with talent could succeed. They still needed to go through countless training and tempering. Only then would their alchemy skills be honed to become more exquisite. From Yang Meiji and Ensheng's point of view, culinary arts were actually similar to alchemy. Bu Fang was slightly surprised. The seriousness of Yang Meiji and Ensheng was somewhat out of his expectations. After giving the two of them a strange look, Bu Fang walked out of the kitchen and into the restaurant. In the restaurant, Lord Go and Yu were both lying on the dining table. They looked at Bu Fang with anticipation. I might have to leave the restaurant for a few days. You guys might have to wait for me to come back before you can have good food. Of course, I can also prepare some chili strips for you guys, Bu Fang said. Speaking of chili strips, Lord Go and Yu's eyes slightly shrank. Bu Fang brat, Lord Go is not hungry. It's just a few days. Lord Go will sleep through it, Lord Go said with a grin. Yu also shook her head blankly. No need for chili strips. No need for chili strip. I will also sleep through it. Bu Fang was a little suspicious. Why did this human and dog have such a strong reaction when he mentioned chili strips? 80 sat on the floor with its chicken butt. Looking at Lord Go and Yu's posture, it chuckled. It was unknown whether it was laughing at them or laughing at something else. However, under Lord Go's sharp gaze, 80 instantly chuckled. Its laughter was instantly stuck in its throat. Bu Fang pulled the corners of his mouth. He was too lazy to care about them. He only gave them a few instructions, then turned around and went into the kitchen. After cooking sweet and sour ribs and dragon blood rice for Lord Go and Yu, he returned to his room. System, I'm ready to go to the Valley of Gluttony, Bu Fang said to the system as he sat upright on the chair. The system did not reply him immediately. After a moment of silence, it solemnly opened its mouth. Temporary mission activated. Valley of Gluttony teleportation begins. The system's voice suddenly became distant in Bu Fang's perception. It was as if it had suddenly become closer. Many familiar white light spots floated in front of Bu Fang's eyes. The entire room was covered in a layer of hazy light. These light spots were like fireflies floating in the sky. They were extremely dazzling, causing people's vision to become somewhat blurry. A familiar teleportation array. Bu Fang looked at these white light spots. The corners of his mouth couldn't help but twitch. He was a little emotional. In the next instant, these white light spots rapidly gathered above his head, condensing into a white and translucent array. The array revolved, and terrifying waves of energy spread out from the teleportation array. Wild winds howled and waves rolled. Bu Fang's figure was sucked into this wild wind. Soon, he became indistinct and disappeared. A buzzing sound rang out. The room returned to its tranquil state. Inside the restaurant, Lord Go lazily opened his dog eyes. Looking at Bu Fang's room, he yawned. He turned his head to look at Yu, who was sitting on the netherworld ship, swinging her long, white legs. Little girl, Bu Fang has left. Don't you want to go with him? I always feel that Bu Fang's trip this time is a little bad. Hidden Dragon Royal Court, Central Region. Majestic mountain peaks rose and fell like sharp longswords that shot up to the sky. The swords moved, looking strangely majestic and dangerous. Lush trees grew everywhere. There were even towering trees that reached the sky, which looked ancient and dispirited. If one continued to walk forward in this region filled with trees, there would be light at the end of the tunnel. Amidst the winding path, there was a large lake with rippling jade-green waves. The water of the lake shimmered and shimmered. There were ancient buildings around the lake. Black smoke billowed from them as they slanted into the sky. This was the Sunset Lake of the Valley of Gluttony. Rumor had it that the Sunset Lake had a terrifying spirit beast. Every year, the Valley of Gluttony would cook a grand feast and pour it into the lake to feed the creatures living there. There was even a rumor that said that the ancient beast, Taotai, was living in the Sunset Lake. Of course, these were just outsiders' guesses. No one knew the details. Even the experts of the Valley of Gluttony didn't know what was living in the lake. Outside the valley, on a mountain road that was 100 miles long, a group of white light dots suddenly appeared, congregating rapidly. A moment later, they became a spiraling teleportation array. The array radiated light. As the light moved, the wind howled. A silhouette emerged from the howling winds. Bufang wore the vermilion robe. In the howling wind, the robe fluttered. The striped red and white vermilion robe made Bufang look more spirited. As he stepped on the mountain road, the wind dispersed. Swoosh! A gust of mountain wind blew, making Bufang feel a little cold. The sky was a little gray. Apparently, it was winter, and there were signs of snow falling. The vermilion robe's light moved, making Bufang feel a little warm, dispersing the cold. This is the Valley of Gluttony? Bufang looked around. In the distance there was an endless mountain road. Around him were steep peaks that reached the clouds. It seemed a little different from what he had imagined. Thinking about it, Bufang continued to walk forward. The spirit energy here was very thick, much thicker than in Heavenly Mist City. This was the center of the hidden dragon continent, the place with the thickest spirit energy in the whole continent. As Bufang inhaled and exhaled, he could feel the spirit energy gushing through his mouth and nose. This place was indeed a paradise for cultivators. In such a place with incomparably thick spirit energy, there would definitely be many spirit energy creatures. There would definitely be many good ingredients. With his hands clasped behind his back, Bufang slowly walked on the mountain road. All of a sudden, a roar came from the sky. A group of people whizzed past in the sky. Their auras were extremely terrifying, and as they walked, they seemed to be able to shake the void. Among them, there was an indifferent young man wearing a golden robe and a golden crown. The young man was tall and straight, and his face was handsome. His aura was incomparably terrifying. The young man stepped on the war chariot, which was pulled by the red dragon. He moved quickly, and his aura was monstrous. The young man seemed to have sensed something. In the sky, his eyes turned and fell on Bufang. However, as if he had sensed Bufang's cultivation, a disdainful look flashed in the young man's eyes. He waved the long whip in his hand, which was flashing with lightning, and lashed it on the red dragon. The red dragon let out a long roar, and it sped up, crossing the sky. Bufang, who was merely at the divine physique echelon realm, did not seem to be in the young man's eyes. Lord Saint, 100 miles ahead is the Valley of Gluttony. Should we get off the war chariot? A loud voice rang out, and it seemed that someone was respectfully asking the young man on the war chariot. Why should we get off the war chariot? It's just the Valley of Gluttony. It's just a vassal force of the royal court. Let's go straight in, the young man said coldly, his voice resonating. In the next moment there was only silence. The war chariot roared, and the red dragon roared. This large group of people drove straight into the Valley of Gluttony without fear. Bufang clasped his hands behind his back, looking at the group in the distance, his face expressionless. 100 miles ahead is the Valley of Gluttony. Then let's continue forward. Bufang let out a light breath, continuing to walk on the 100 miles of mountain road, slowly. As for the majestic and magnificent group of saints, Bufang did not pay much attention to them. After walking for 100 miles, Bufang took a step forward. The scene in front of him suddenly changed, twisting and changing in an instant. Chapter 642. As soon as he took a step forward, the scene in front of him changed drastically. Bufang felt that the scene in front of him was a little blurry. He let out a long breath, and the scene in front of him became a little clearer. Beneath his feet was a solid blue stone path, and between the stone slabs, there were lush green grass swaying. In the distance, there was a vast lake that stretched as far as the eye could see. The lake water was sparkling, and it was glistening under the sunlight. Bufang surveyed his surroundings. Just a moment ago, he was still in the middle of a mountain path, but in the blink of an eye, he had entered a valley. He was surrounded by mountains on all sides, and he was at the edge of a lake. It was verdant and lush, and the scenery was beautiful. This should be the so-called Valley of Gluttony. Previously, there was a magic array set up on the mountain path. Stepping into the magic array was equivalent to being teleported away, and he entered the valley in an instant. Bufang's location was quite remote, and there were very few people here. Bufang looked into the distance, and he could see that there was a chain of buildings in the distance. Those buildings were incomparably exquisite, and every building had a chimney, which was emitting smoke. Rumble! A series of rumbles caused Bufang to raise his head and look in the direction of the sound. Above the sky there was a tremor. In the next moment there was a flash of light, and groups of people appeared out of nowhere. Obviously, these people had also passed through the teleportation array on the mountain path and arrived here. These people had a powerful aura, and their faces were solemn. Some of them carried stone swords on their backs, and some held long spears. These people were experts from the top forces of the Hidden Dragon continent. They had received the invitation from the Valley of Gluttony, and they all rushed here to participate in the Glutton God's banquet. Among them, Bufang even saw many familiar faces. For example, there was a cold-faced man with a heavy sword on his back. He was Shimen Xian, whom Bufang had met before. Now, although Shimen Xian's face was cold, he was respectfully following behind the leading expert. The leading expert's body was bulging, and his terrifying muscles were densely packed like a horned dragon. His eyes were extremely bright, and his gaze was like a god's. It was as if there were arrows shooting out from his eyes. This person was the head of the Grand Baron Sect's 10 great sons of heaven, to Oba Yi. The Grand Baron Sect's strongest heaven's chosen one was astonishingly talented. Apart from the Grand Baron Sect, the Wind and Thunder Pavilion, the ancient Shura City, the Puppet Sect, and other factions also sent their experts over. These experts all possessed terrifying strength. This time, it could be said to be a clash between the major forces of the continent. The experts of the Pill Palace also came. Bufang looked at Luo Danqing, who was walking out gracefully. He raised his eyebrows in surprise. However, after the initial shock, he didn't do anything. Luo Danqing didn't notice Bufang. After chatting with the others with a smile, he moved forward and disappeared into the horizon. Rip! There was a roar. The terrifying sword chi suddenly spread across the entire sky. In the sky above, beams of sword light seemed to tear everything apart as several figures appeared. All of them stood on flying swords and wore embroidered robes. Their expressions were indifferent, but the aura coming from them was extremely terrifying. It was especially so for the person in the lead. Even the space around him seemed to have been distorted by the sword aura. Suddenly, Bufang froze. His eyes focused on the group of figures standing on flying swords. Among them, he found a very familiar figure. Bufang furrowed his eyebrows and looked at them in surprise. The figure on the flying sword seemed to have sensed Bufang's gaze. His eyes turned and met Bufang's gaze. That person was stunned, and in the next moment, his pupils shrank. Owner Bu! The Valley of Gluttony was indeed the Valley of Gluttony. Bufang walked slowly along the bluestone path beside the lake. He couldn't help but sigh. There were countless experts in this valley. Just the experts he had met before were enough to destroy the Pill Palace. However, because of this, Bufang suddenly became interested in the Glutton God's banquet. To be able to attract so many experts, it was enough to prove that the Glutton God's banquet wasn't ordinary. Of course, his main purpose in coming to the Valley of Gluttony was to complete a temporary task. To capture the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish in the Sunset Lake. Bufang turned his head and looked at the boundless lake beside him. It was like a vast sea. He couldn't help but twitch his mouth. It sounded easy to capture the heaven-swallowing fish, but in reality, it was extremely difficult. After all, this lake was so vast. Who knew where the heaven-swallowing fish were? Bufang furrowed his eyebrows. He clasped his hands and stood by the lake. The vermilion robe swayed slightly under the mighty wind blowing on the surface of the lake. From time to time, there would be fish leaping out of the lake. The fish's scales shone under the light. The fish breathed out spiritual energy, looking very lively. However, in the next moment, the fish that leaped out of the water was swallowed by an even bigger and more ferocious fish. Water splashed and waves rolled. Bufang watched, letting the lake breeze blow. Under the lake, a huge shadow suddenly appeared. Bufang's eyes shrank. With a rumble, the lake water surged, and the huge shadow rushed out of the lake. It opened its bloody mouth and swallowed the big fish that had swallowed the small fish. With a rumble, the shadow fell into the lake, causing the surface of the lake to explode. The lake water surged like a tsunami. A strong gust of wind blew, bringing with it cold water vapor that slapped Bufang's face. In the sky far away, many people were watching this scene with smiles on their faces. They were pointing at the huge shadow in the lake. Bufang gently exhaled. All of a sudden, a tender voice rang behind Bufang, causing Bufang to be slightly bewildered. "That's a powerful spirit beast in our sunset lake. It's really terrifying." Bufang turned around and saw a pretty little girl standing in front of him. The little girl tilted her head, her eyes twinkling. She was wearing a dirty chef robe with her sleeves rolled up. Her hair was a little messy, and she was carrying a big basket on her back. "Are you also here to participate in our Valley of Gluttony's Glutton God's banquet?" asked the little girl curiously. Bufang looked at the little girl suspiciously. After hesitating for a while, he nodded his head. "You can say that," said Bufang. Hearing Bufang's confirmation, the little girl's big eyes instantly brightened. She pulled her almost drooping sleeves, smiling at Bufang. "I really envy you. Participating in the Glutton God's banquet, you can taste the dishes of many first-grade chefs on the tablet of gluttony. You can even taste the dishes of special-grade chefs. If I can taste the dishes of first-grade chefs, how good would that be?" The little girl carried the bamboo basket on her back and raised her head. She seemed to have thought of something, and the corners of her mouth almost drooled. The corners of Bufang's mouth twitched. However, his heart was also moved. The Glutton God's banquet's dishes were all made by first-grade chefs or special-grade chefs of the Valley of Gluttony. Back then, when Rincho was only a second-grade chef, and even Zhou Tong was only a first-grade chef. However, their culinary skills were already very good. Bufang's heart was suddenly filled with anticipation. "Alright, I have to go. Otherwise, the fat uncle in the restaurant will beat me up again. Big brother, you should be careful. Although the Sunset Lake doesn't look dangerous on the surface, there are countless spirit beasts in the lake. If you are not careful, a spirit beast will jump out and kill you." The little girl tightened the basket on her back and reminded Bufang. Then, she turned around and was about to leave. She was wearing a dirty chef robe, and her back was a little shaky. It was obvious that the heavy things in the basket made it difficult for her to walk. Bufang looked at the little girl's back and furrowed his brows. He took a step forward and lifted the basket on the little girl's back. "I'll help you carry it, and you will bring me around the Valley of Gluttony. How about that?" Bufang said calmly. He lifted the basket on his back and glanced at it. Rising fire grass, black-shelled cuttlefish, 7-star fruit. These are all good ingredients. Bufang looked at the basket and analyzed the ingredients in it. The little girl felt the heavy basket on her back disappear, and her heart instantly panicked. After hearing what Bufang said, her face relaxed. However, the little girl still said, "No. I have to go back to the restaurant. Otherwise, the fat uncle will scold me or even beat me up. Big brother, why don't you follow me back to the restaurant? After the opening hours, Xiao Yu will bring you around the Valley of Gluttony." The little girl opened her big eyes and said. She did not know why, but Bufang always gave her an incomparably comfortable feeling. Inexplicably, she wanted to get close to Bufang. "Okay," Bufang said concisely. He carried the basket on his back and gestured for Xiao Ye to lead the way. The little girl was instantly happy, jumping and skipping as she walked. "Big brother, you can call me Xiao Ye. This is the name my grandfather gave me." The little girl turned around and said to Bufang. Her big eyes squinted, which made her look really pretty. "I'm Bufang." Bufang nodded his head. The two of them slowly walked along the bluestone path around the lake. Along the way, the little girl chattered non-stop. When she was tired of talking, she even used her dirty and loose chef robe to wipe her face, making her look like a little tabby cat. After walking for a while, Bufang saw the buildings in the distance, which were gradually becoming clearer. "That is the village where Xiao Ye lives. In the Valley of Gluttony, there are many villages like this," Xiao Ye said. "Village?" Bufang's eyes focused. "Most of the villages in the Valley of Gluttony are villages. There is only one big city, which is the Glutton God City that is surrounded by many villages. That is the gathering place of countless top chefs. It is the holy land in the hearts of the chefs in our village. This time, the Glutton God's banquet will be held in the Glutton God City," Xiao Ye said. She brought Bufang into the village. This village was quite prosperous. Although it was called a village, it could be considered a small city. Although it was not as big as the Heavenly Mist City, it was much more prosperous than the Light Wind Empire. Under Xiao Ye's lead, they walked through the crowd for a long time before finally reaching their destination. "That is the restaurant where Xiao Ye works." Xiao Ye pointed at an exquisitely decorated restaurant in the distance and said to Bufang. This restaurant was really grand. Along the way, Bufang found many restaurants, but the decoration of this restaurant was the best. Handing the basket to the little girl, Bufang watched as the little girl carried the basket and staggered into the restaurant. Bufang also clasped his hands, looking around. There were restaurants all around, and the streets seemed to be filled with the aroma of cooking dishes. This was indeed a chef's paradise, Bufang exclaimed inwardly. In the next moment, his gaze shifted to the restaurant where Xiao Ye worked. Slowly, he took a step forward, stepping into the restaurant. Once he entered the restaurant, the noise instantly entered his ears. It made Bufang feel slightly dazed. "Sir, are you here to eat? Please sit here." When a beautiful woman with a good figure saw Bufang, her eyes instantly brightened. She walked over and led Bufang. After leading Bufang to a seat, she took a menu and gave it to Bufang. Bufang sat upright with an indifferent expression on his face. Just as he was about to look at the menu, he heard a series of curses. The curses were accompanied by the heart-wrenching cries of a little girl. That cry was somewhat familiar, and it made Bufang's brows involuntarily furrow. Chapter 643. You stupid girl! What's the use of you? I asked you to buy some ingredients, but you were gone for so long. Look at what you've just bought. A sharp voice pierced out from the kitchen, causing many people to involuntarily narrow their eyes. That voice was too sharp, as if it wanted to pierce through people's ears, making them feel uncomfortable. Along with that sharp roar, there was a mournful cry. That voice seemed familiar, causing Bufang to furrow his brows. That voice. It seemed to be that little girl's voice? What happened over there? Bufang looked at the beautiful woman who was pouring tea for him, asking casually. The beautiful woman was bewildered. In the next instant, a smile appeared on her beautiful face. Dear customer, don't worry about it. It's just our restaurant's chef educating an insensible, stupid girl. This kind of thing happens all the time. Don't worry about it. Look at the menu and see what you want to eat. Insensible, stupid girl. When Bufang heard that, his face became colder. With a loud bang, he slammed the menu on the table. Under the beautiful woman's astonished gaze, he stood up. I forgot to tell you. That girl has a good relationship with me, Bufang said casually. His vermilion robe swayed, and his figure walked toward the place where the mournful cry came from. His steps became faster and soon, he disappeared from the beautiful woman's sight. The beautiful woman came back to her senses, and the smile on her face disappeared. Instantly, she screamed, "Are you here to cause trouble? Come here." Bufang took big steps, appearing in the kitchen in just a few steps. When his footsteps landed, it seemed that many people in the kitchen turned their heads in surprise. The scene in front of them made Bufang furrow his brows, and his eyes revealed a murderous aura. The basket fell to the side, and the ingredients inside were scattered all over the floor. A petite figure fell in the distance. Her face was filled with frightened tears, and she used both hands to cover her body. That shabby chef's robe was full of cracks, and blood seeped out from the cracks. This little girl was none other than Xiaoya, the little girl who had been chattering nonstop beside Bufang's ear a while ago. However, Xiaoya no longer had that innocent and romantic look from before. She was lying on the ground in fear. Her hair was a mess, and her face was full of tears. Her petite body was covered with blood and whip marks. She knelt on the ground and kept begging for mercy to the fat man who was holding a whip in his hand and holding his head high. The fatty's eyes were filled with disdain and a sneer. The true energy in his hand undulated slightly, causing the long whip to flutter. As the long whip lashed out, the little girl immediately felt a chill emerge all over her body, causing her body to tremble. "Don't hit me! Boo-hoo, I was wrong!" Xiaoya cried and begged for mercy. When Bufang saw this scene, he felt as if he was suffocating in his chest. Even his ice-cold face revealed a hint of anger. "Wrong? Do you know where you went wrong? You bought the wrong ingredients and missed the time. Not only did you waste crystals, you even missed my cooking time. Do you know how big of a sin you have committed?" The fatty laughed sinisterly, and the muscles on his face were trembling. With a flick of his hand, the long whip lashed out once again. With a loud slap, it landed on the little girl's body. Xiaoya cried out miserably, and her body curled up. She crawled on the ground quickly, and a streak of blood appeared on her dirty chef's robe. Bean-sized teardrops rolled down the little girl's face. Fei Jin was very angry today, not because of anything else, but because today was the Glutton God's banquet held by the Valley of Gluttony. He, Fei Jin, was not able to enter the Glutton God city to cook for the Glutton God's banquet because he had yet to make it onto the tablet of Glutton God. Coincidentally, this foolish little girl had bumped into him, so Fei Jin decided to vent his anger on her. After venting his anger in this manner, Fei Jin felt a little better. Hence he became even more aggressive as he lashed out with the whip again and again. Looking at the fresh blood seeping out from the little girl's body, the crazed look on Fei Jin's face became even more intense. "Stupid little girl! Do you still dare to talk back to me next time?" Slap! Another whip lashed out. However, this time, the whip was blocked by someone. Fei Jin squinted his eyes and stared coldly at the skinny figure who had caught his whip with a single hand. The little girl who was crying on the ground seemed to have felt that the whip had not landed on her body. She raised her head, and tears streamed down her cheeks. Coincidentally, she saw the scene of Bufang grabbing onto Fei Jin's whip. "What are you doing?" Bufang asked coldly. True energy surged in his hands, and in an instant, he exerted his strength and yanked on the long whip. Fei Jin was stunned, and in the next moment, he lost his balance. Being yanked by Bufang, he stumbled a few steps and fell onto the ground with a thud. "Motherf *****, you're courting death." Fei Jin leaped up from the ground. His entire body seemed to be on the verge of exploding, and the fats on his body were trembling in anger. His eyes were wide open as he stared at Bufang with a murderous aura. Bufang held onto the long whip with a single hand as he looked at Fei Jin calmly. Bufang took 2 steps forward and stood in front of the little girl. With a flip of his vermilion robe, his sleeves fluttered in the wind. "What's the meaning of beating up a little girl like this?" Bufang said calmly. "Who do you think you are? How dare you interfere in my, Fei Jin's, affairs? In this village, what right do you have to control me?" Fei Jin gritted his teeth and said. He was actually dragged down by a little brat who had only broken through one Supreme Being's shackle. How embarrassing! The aura on Fei Jin's body surged, and in the next moment, 3 swaying chains shot up into the sky behind him. Whoosh! As the chains collided, a terrifying aura spread out. Outside the door, the flustered and exasperated beautiful woman led a group of people and rushed in. Many of these guards were divine physique echelon experts who had broken through 1 or 2 shackles. With so many people surrounding Bufang, the little girl on the ground was so scared that her face turned pale. "Big brother, don't worry about me. I'm the one in the wrong, hurry and leave." Xiao Ye sobbed and hurriedly pushed Bufang's leg. Bufang furrowed his brows as he patted Xiao Ye's head. Regardless of the reason, Bufang couldn't tolerate the fact that Fei Jin was bullying a little girl like this. "Step back," Bufang said. Xiao Ye seemed to be influenced by Bufang's calm aura as she stopped crying. She took a few steps back and looked at Bufang curiously. In the next moment, Bufang turned his head and looked at Fei Jin. Fei Jin's lips curled into a cruel smile. At this moment, his chest was filled with a gloomy feeling. This brat actually came to him on his own accord. Originally, he really couldn't vent his anger by bullying a little girl. However, beating this brat up should be enough. "Brat, you're courting death. Don't blame this chef then." There was a loud bang. A terrifying aura emanated from Fei Jin's body as he took a step forward and appeared in front of Bufang like a ferocious beast. With a punch, his fats trembled uncontrollably. 3 shackles swayed as an extreme aura burst forth. Fei Jin's face was filled with madness. Crush! In his eyes, this brat had merely broken through one of the Supreme Being's shackles. Such an ant could be easily crushed. Boom! However, in the next moment, the smile on Fei Jin's face froze. This was because he realized that his punch had landed on a hard object, causing his face to contort. "What the hell is this?" Fei Jin's eyes widened as he stared at the pitch-black wok in Bufang's hand with a twisted expression. "Smash your wok," Bufang said indifferently. In the next moment, the black turtle constellation wok was waved and smashed onto Fei Jin's face. Fei Jin's aura was unable to withstand the onslaught of the wok at all. With a loud boom, he was sent flying backward, and his eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. There was a loud rumble. Fei Jin staggered as he climbed up from the ground. His nose was almost smashed, and he was in a daze. "You!" He pointed a trembling finger at Bufang. He was so angry that his mouth was trembling. Bufang held onto the black turtle constellation wok with one hand as he looked on expressionlessly. From afar, everyone, including the little girl, was dumbfounded. An expert who had broken through 3 Supreme Being shackles was actually sent flying by a brat who had only broken through 1 shackle? What the hell was going on? "Go! Everyone, go! This brat is here to cause trouble, capture him!" The beautiful lady screamed as she saw Fei Jin being sent flying by the wok. Fei Jin was the head chef of their restaurant, a 3rd-grade chef from the Valley of Gluttony. He had an esteemed status, and no accidents could be allowed to happen to him. After all, without Fei Jin, their restaurant would never be able to become one of the top restaurants in the village. Although the village was not big, with Fei Jin's reputation, their restaurant was able to thrive in the village like a fish in water. The guards also regained their senses as they roared and unleashed all sorts of true energy, causing the shackles around them to shake violently. They all charged towards Bufang with an imposing aura. Bufang coldly swept his gaze across this group of people. He gently raised the black turtle constellation wok in his hand, and in the next moment, true energy surged into the wok. The black wok seemed to have come to life as the patterns on it flickered and shot out violently. The black turtle constellation wok spun and whizzed out. The guards were unconcerned as each of them threw out a punch in an attempt to suppress this black wok. However, when they touched the black wok, Everyone's expression changed drastically. Poochie! One figure after another was crushed by the wok, falling onto the ground and spurting out blood. The beautiful lady was stunned, and Fei Jin stood rooted to the ground. Could this brat be a genius disciple from the holy grounds? He had only broken through one supreme being's shackle, yet he was able to suppress experts of the same level? Were their eyes playing tricks on them? The beautiful lady's entire body was trembling. She held onto her handkerchief and pointed at Bufang as she said, "You brat, you actually dared to cause trouble in the Valley of Gluttony's restaurant. Do you know? Chef Fei Jin has the chance to enter the Tablet of Gluttony." Tablet of Gluttony? What's that? Bufang was startled. After hearing the beautiful lady's words, Fei Jin immediately puffed out his chest with a face full of pride, as if the beautiful lady was talking about something that he should be proud of. "Oh, does this lady mean that you should be an incredible chef?" Bufang turned his head and looked at Fei Jin coldly. "If that's the case, then let's have a chef's challenge." Chapter 644. Then I shall challenge you to a chef's challenge. Bufang tilted his head and looked at Fei Jin indifferently. His expression was so calm and collected, as if he was talking about something insignificant. However, his words sent chills down the spines of many people. Chef's challenge? This brat wanted to challenge Fei Jin to a chef's challenge? Did he know what a chef's challenge was? Did he know what a chef's challenge meant? Why was this brat able to challenge him so calmly? In the Valley of Gluttony, there was no one who did not know about chef's challenges. This was because in this region where culinary skills were prevalent, the battle between chefs depended on this chef's challenge. Whoever was unconvinced would have a chef's challenge. In the Valley of Gluttony, the chef's challenge was reflected by the Tablet of Gluttony and verified by the Oath of Gluttony. Once defeated, one would be stripped of their kitchen knife and lose their right to cook. Of course, that was unless there was an important figure in the Valley of Gluttony who was willing to redeem the Oath of Gluttony. Fei Jin did not expect this arrogant brat in front of him to not show fear after hearing about his reputation, but to propose a chef's challenge instead. Was there something wrong with this brat's brain? Fei Jin had never seen a person named Bufang on the Tablet of Gluttony. Therefore, Bufang's culinary skills should not be too high. Since his culinary skills were not high, where did this brat get the courage to challenge him from? Was he stupid? The others finally reacted and sneered at Bufang. This brat actually chose a chef's challenge. Wasn't he seeking his own death? If he were to forcefully wave that pitch-black wok, they might not be able to withstand it. However, since he chose a chef's challenge, he was simply seeking his own death. Chef Fei Jin was a chef who was just a step away from being listed on the Tablet of Gluttony. He was the signature chef of their restaurant and the best chef in the entire village. The little girl, Xiao Ye, did not expect that Bufang would actually propose a chef's challenge. An anxious look appeared on her little face. "Big brother, don't challenge him," Xiao Ye said anxiously. She was really worried. Although this Chef Fei's character was not good, his culinary skills were undeniable. He was the best chef in their village. It's really dangerous for Big Brother to have a chef's challenge with the fat chef. When the beautiful woman heard Bufang's words, she immediately covered her mouth and laughed sharply. Challenging Master Chef Fei Jin in a chef's challenge, this kid is really courting death. Chef Fei Jin, torture him mercilessly. Let him know what true culinary skill is. The beautiful woman shouted. The corners of Chef Fei Jin's mouth curled upwards, and the muscles on his face trembled slightly. Chef's challenge, it was exactly as he wished. That strange black wok had left him in a daze and fearful. Perhaps he might not be able to deal with this brat in terms of combat, but in terms of culinary skills, other than the group of chefs on the Tablet of Gluttony, who else would he, Fei Jin, be afraid of? I'll fight as many as they come. Come on. A chef's challenge was a chef's challenge. Since you're courting death, this great chef shall grant you your wish. Fei Jin laughed out loud as he patted his own belly, causing it to bulge. Bufang continued to tilt his head as he looked at the inexplicably excited Fei Jin, a little confused. What's there to be excited about? Why would this fellow be so excited about having a chef's challenge with me? Bufang raised his brows and said calmly, "Then let's have a chef's challenge. You can set the rules however you want." Set the rules however you want? How arrogant! How insolent! Where the hell did this young man come from? Challenging Master Chef Fei Jin to a chef's challenge, and even allowing the latter to set the rules however he wanted? Did he really think that his culinary skills were invincible? This was the Valley of Gluttony, and within the Valley of Gluttony, there were countless people with amazing culinary skills. Furthermore, Fei Jin was a third-grade chef, so how could this young man offend him? One look at Bufang, and it was obvious that he was not from the Valley of Gluttony. A chef from outside the Valley of Gluttony actually dared to challenge a chef from the Valley of Gluttony. Who gave him the courage to do so? Fei Jin's ferocious face twitched as he revealed a sinister smile. With a flash of light, a chef's robe appeared in his hands, and he put it on. His chef's robe was slightly different from the others. There were 3 golden patterns embroidered on the sleeves, and the overall feeling of his robe was much more domineering than the others. This was the chef's robe that belonged to a third-grade chef from the Valley of Gluttony. Bufang's vermilion robe was completely different from this chef's robe. Fei Jin could not tell the level of culinary skills of Bufang at all. However, Fei Jin was very confident. Since Bufang was not from the Valley of Gluttony, what did he have to fear? Chefs from outside the Valley of Gluttony were all trash in the eyes of the chefs from the Valley of Gluttony. Since this chef has set the rules, then you can just wait to cry. What an arrogant brat! Fei Jin sneered. The group of people walked forward slowly and arrived at the empty seats on the second floor of the restaurant. The tables and chairs here had already been moved away by the beautiful madam, so there was enough space for the 2 of them to have a chef's challenge. Many people who knew that there was going to be a chef's challenge gathered around excitedly. In order to let everyone see Bufang's humiliation, the beautiful madam did not chase them away. Hence, this chef's challenge had become even more eye-catching. Very quickly, the stove was set up. Fei Jin, who was wearing a third-grade chef's robe, looked at Bufang with a smile that did not seem like a smile. He held a heavy black iron kitchen knife in his hand. This kitchen knife was incomparably heavy and was forged from precious iron ores. He did have quite a bit of power. I won't go into too much detail about the rules. There is a pile of ingredients on the left. You can choose whatever you want, and so will I. There are 50 diners here. After we have finished cooking, these 50 diners will judge, and the one with the highest score will be the winner. How about that? Fei Jin said. Bufang glanced at him and said indifferently, "Up to you." His nonchalant attitude caused many of the surrounding people to suck in a breath of cold air. This young man was really arrogant. The beautiful madam and the others crossed their arms and stood at a distance, waiting for Bufang's distorted expression after losing the chef's challenge. No one would be able to remain calm after losing a chef's challenge. This was because once a chef's challenge was lost, it meant that he had lost the right to cook and his kitchen knife would be taken away. To a chef, it was simply a disaster. You brat. You're really arrogant. I hope you won't cry later. Fei Jin's face was filled with killing intent. Bufang's attitude had infuriated him. Ignoring Bufang, Fei Jin strode towards the pile of ingredients. These ingredients were used by the restaurant to cook delicacies. Although the quality was not that great, this was a chef's challenge. It was a test of one's culinary skills, not the ingredients. Fei Jin returned after a short while. He was carrying a gigantic spirit beast on his shoulder. With a loud thud, he slammed the gigantic spirit beast onto the stove. This was a bull-type spirit beast. Surging spirit energy flowed around the bull-type spirit beast's body. After slamming the bull-type spirit beast onto the stove, Fei Jin grabbed the heavy black iron kitchen knife. He did not play around with the knife. Instead, he directly chopped down on the bull-type spirit beast's head. With a dull thud, the bull-type spirit beast's head fell onto the ground amidst the screams of the surrounding people. Fresh blood splattered everywhere, creating a bloody scene. However, this bloody scene had stirred up everyone's emotions as they watched Fei Jin's cooking with excitement and fervor. Bufang was unfazed by this bloody scene as he glanced sideways at Fei Jin, who was dealing with the bull-type spirit beast. The little girl, Xiaoya, stood behind Bufang as she held onto her hands nervously. Her big eyes were filled with worry as she looked at Bufang. She really wanted to persuade Bufang not to participate in this chef's challenge because she knew how strong Fei Jin's culinary skills were. Furthermore, looking at the ingredients that Fei Jin had chosen this time, it was obvious that he was going to cook his signature dish, the stir-fried beef offal. This was the restaurant's most popular and best-selling dish. Countless diners in the village came for this dish because of its reputation. This time, Fei Jin actually chose this dish as his chef's challenge dish. Obviously, he did not intend to give Bufang any chance. He wanted to thoroughly torture this reckless brat in front of him to death. Rip! The black iron kitchen knife slashed forward. The cow's stomach was instantly torn apart by the knife as fresh blood splattered everywhere. Fei Jin's face was filled with a sinister smile as his fats jiggled continuously. As he moved, his face became more and more excited. Fresh blood covered his face as he raised his head to look at Bufang. His eyes were filled with a domineering aura. Brat! Prepare to lose. I'm going to torture you until you cry. Fei Jin stuck out his tongue and licked the cow's blood that had splattered on his face, making him look even more ferocious. Light the fire and heat the wok. Boom, boom, boom. Flames shot up into the sky from the stove as Fei Jin poured all the processed ingredients into the wok. The wok spatula in his hand spun and in the next moment, he stabbed it into the wok. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. As he stir-fried, the unique aroma of the beef offal permeated the air and lingered for a long time. Many people couldn't help but reveal expressions of surprise when they smelled this aroma. As expected of Chef Fei Jin, this stir-fried beef offal was much more delicious than those made by the restaurant's apprentices. The waitress was very satisfied as she nodded her head from time to time. With Chef Fei Jin's reputation, their restaurant would only grow bigger and bigger. If Chef Fei Jin managed to make it onto the tablet of gluttony, their restaurant would become even more popular. Their reputation would even spread throughout the Gluttony God City. One had to know that if one wanted to open a restaurant in the Gluttony God City, the first requirement was to make it onto the tablet of gluttony. If one wanted to open a restaurant in the Valley of Gluttony, they would need a third-grade chef to oversee it. Fei Jin's standard was not weak among the third-grade chefs. This was also the reason why their restaurant could become so popular. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. Fei Jin grinned as he looked at Bufang. He single-handedly grabbed a jar of wine, opened the lid, and poured a mouthful of the turbid yellow wine into his mouth. Accompanied by a loud laugh, he poured the wine into the wok, causing the wok to instantly erupt into flames. An uproar broke out in the surroundings. Bufang calmly looked at this scene. Looking at the crazed Fei Jin, he let out a light breath. With his hands behind his back, he walked out of the stove and toward the pile of ingredients. Bufang's actions also attracted the attention of many people. Many of them were curious as to what kind of dish this kid, who dared to challenge Chef Fei Jin to a chef's stir-fried beef offal, would choose to counter Chef Fei Jin's stir-fried beef offal. The little girl, Xiaoya, was also quite curious. The waitress crossed her arms and sneered coldly at Bufang. Fei Jin was holding a spatula in his hand as he scooped out the flames and grinned at Bufang. Under the gazes of the crowd, Bufang stretched out his hand and took out a few spirit beast eggs from the pile of ingredients that were piled up like a small mountain. Chapter 645. Spirit Beast Eggs. Everyone looked at the Spirit Beast eggs in Bufang's hand, which were filled with dense spiritual energy, and they were all dumbfounded. This brat was actually planning to use eggs to defeat Chef Fei Jin? Egg-based cooking was one of the simplest cooking methods. Although the taste of dishes cooked with eggs would not be too bad, it was still a far cry from the stir-fried beef offal. This was merely due to the difference in the ingredient. Don't tell me this brat has just become a chef? That's right. Perhaps he only knows how to cook something like egg-fried rice, hee. Who knows, maybe he only knows how to cook boiled eggs. The surrounding people were chattering non-stop, and their eyes were filled with ridicule as they looked at Bufang. Fei Jin shook his head as his heart calmed down. He was initially afraid that this brat would turn the tables and defeat him. However, from the looks of it now, this brat was merely putting on a show. He actually planned to use eggs to defeat him. Stir-fried beef offal was his signature dish. Regardless of the ingredients or the cooking method, it was much more advanced compared to the egg dishes. Hence, it was basically impossible for him to lose. With this thought in mind, the confidence in his heart increased. The sound of his wok colliding with the wok became even more intense. What a trashy brat! With this level of skill, he still wants to defeat Chef Fei Jin. Youngsters nowadays really don't know what's good for them. The beautiful lady crossed her arms as she sneered. The sounds of laughter from the crowd became even more intense. Bufang calmly walked back to the stove. He did not care about the crowd's laughter at all. Let them laugh. This group of people knew nothing about the truth. Bufang returned to the stove and put down the Spirit Beast eggs in his hands. There were only a few small Spirit Beast eggs on the stove. Compared to Fei Jin's stunning Spirit Beast ox, there was a huge difference. Only eggs? This time, the crowd was truly stunned. There was no rice, nor any other ingredients. What was this brat trying to do? Poached eggs? Or was he really going to cook a boiled egg? The crowd's expression became even more strange. The little girl, Xiaoya, was puzzled as well. She looked at Bufang, feeling a little worried. But when she saw the calm look on Bufang's face, she suddenly felt a little more confident. Perhaps, Big Brother really had his own considerations. Xiaoya had to believe in her big brother. Are you giving up? You want to challenge my stir-fried beef with just a few eggs? Fei Jin slammed the spatula down with a loud thud, causing the flames in the wok to slowly die down. A rich fragrance immediately spread out from the wok. Fei Jin single-handedly grabbed a wooden pail and poured out the clear water that had turned bright red from washing the beef offal. He then retrieved a piece of beef intestine from the pail and used his black metal kitchen knife to slice the intestine into a few pieces before tossing them into the pot. Chi-chi! Flames soared into the sky once again as seasonings and ingredients were poured into it, causing the fragrance to become even more intense. What right do you have to look down on egg? Bufang turned his head and glanced at Fei Jin. Looking down on eggs? Fei Jin was dumbfounded. Since when did he look down on the egg? He was merely pointing out the limitations of egg-type ingredients. However, just as he was about to retort, Bufang could no longer be bothered with him. The simple cooking stove in front of him was extremely tattered. Bufang glanced at it indifferently, then glanced at the beautiful lady from afar as the corners of his mouth twitched. A ray of light flashed in his hand as the black turtle constellation wok soared into the sky and expanded continuously. A loud boom resounded through the air. In an instant, the black turtle constellation wok came crashing down ruthlessly. The violent sound attracted everyone's attention. When Fei Jin and the rest saw the black wok, their faces darkened. This wok was King poisonous. Under everyone's gaze, the black wok ruthlessly smashed onto the cooking stove, smashing it into smithereens. This kind of broken cooking stove, I don't need it anymore, Bufang said indifferently. In the next instant, with a thought, a few blue and white porcelain bowls flew out from the system dimensional storage. The blue and white porcelain bowls floated in the air and rotated slowly. With a flick of Bu Fang's hand, a spirit beast egg flew out and cracked open with a cracking sound. Other than the eggshell, the egg white and the egg yolk all fell into the porcelain bowl. With one hand behind his back, the blue and white porcelain bowl fell into Bu Fang's hands and was held by Bu Fang with a single hand. With a thought, the egg liquid in the porcelain bowl began to swirl rapidly. The egg liquid mixed together and quickly became a murky yellow. It was beaten evenly. I gave you face, but you don't want it. It's already good enough that I prepared a cooking stove for you, the beautiful lady sneered coldly as she looked at Bu Fang's smelly appearance. Without a cooking stove, it would be even more difficult for Bu Fang to win. To a chef, having a cooking stove or not was extremely important. Swish. The blue and white porcelain bowl was placed in front of Bu Fang's chest. The egg liquid in the bowl was still swirling, forming a small whirlpool. Many people were puzzled as they looked at his actions. What was this kid trying to do? This was because they could not understand Bu Fang's actions. Suddenly, someone seemed to have thought of something. This kid can't be planning to make egg custard, right? Egg custard? This person's exclamation caused many people to come to a realization. That's right. It was highly possible that he was cooking egg custard. However, wanting to use that bland taste of egg custard to defeat Chef Fei Jin's incomparably delicious stir-fried beef offal, this kid's brain must have been kicked by a donkey, right? Start the fire and heat up the wok. Bu Fang's chest heaved slightly. In the next instant, he opened his mouth and a ball of golden flames flew out from his mouth and landed under the black turtle constellation wok. This was the heaven and earth obsidian flame, the 10,000 bestial flame. Once the heaven and earth obsidian flame appeared, all other flames would prostrate before it. The vigorous flames within the Fei Jin wok suddenly became sluggish and was instantly extinguished. Fei Jin was taken aback. He raised his head and saw the scorching flames beneath Bu Fang's black wok. Hiss hiss hiss. This kid actually had such a good item? This was a heaven and earth obsidian flame. However, the astonishment on Fei Jin's face quickly disappeared. Bu Fang's possession of a heaven and earth obsidian flame had indeed exceeded Fei Jin's expectations. However, when he thought about the terrifying might of a heaven and earth obsidian flame, this kid actually wanted to use it to cook. Wasn't he just seeking death? Especially when cooking an egg custard that was extremely particular about the fluctuation of spiritual energy. If he was not careful and did not control the heat properly, the egg custard would become extremely unpalatable. The corners of Fei Jin's mouth twitched as he continued to stir-fry. He was looking forward to seeing Bu Fang make a fool of himself. However, Bu Fang really did not pay any attention to him. His hand was covered with a thin layer of true energy blade as he slowly stroked it. The true energy blade cleansed the layer of egg foam within the blue and white porcelain bowl. After adding some seasonings, Bu Fang waited for the egg custard to stabilize. He took out the Heaven Alps Spirit Spring water from the system's dimensional storage and poured it into the blue and white porcelain bowl, spreading out the egg custard. This caused the color of the egg custard to become a few shades lighter. Once again, he used the true energy blade to remove the foam within the bowl. Bu Fang gently exhaled a breath of air as his mental energy surged out. As he sensed the fluctuation of spiritual energy within the egg custard, the corners of his mouth twitched slightly. Bu Fang's palm was covered with a layer of true energy as he covered the mouth of the bowl with his palm, causing the true energy to turn into a thin layer that covered the mouth of the bowl. With a single thought, his true energy transformed into a few invisible needles that pierced through the thin layer, creating several holes on the thin layer. Faint spiritual energy gushed out from the holes. After completing all the preparations, he placed the blue and white porcelain bowl into the black turtle constellation wok. With a single thought, the lid of the black turtle constellation wok automatically closed. Gulp. Bufang placed his hands behind his back as he used his will to sense the flow and fluctuation of spiritual energy within the wok. Bufang's calmness caused everyone to be somewhat astonished. This was because they realized that Bufang was really cooking egg custard. This kid actually dared to cook egg custard. How could he use egg custard to challenge Chef Fei Jin's stir-fried beef offal? He was simply courting death. Boom, boom, boom. Fei Jin laughed out loud as he shook the wok, causing the offal within it to fly up into the air. An aroma surged out, causing the surrounding people to exclaim in admiration. How fragrant! This aroma! This is the authentic Chef Fei Jin's beef offal. This aroma is much more delicious than the one cooked by his apprentices. It's been a long time since I've tasted Chef Fei Jin's stir-fried beef offal. I'm really craving for it. I wonder if I'll have the chance to try it later. Many people were whispering to each other, and some even wiped their mouths to suck back the saliva. With a shake of the wok, the shiny and fragrant offal fell into the spatula, and a white porcelain plate was placed on the stove. There was a loud bang. Fei Jin forcefully flipped the spatula into the porcelain plate and lifted it up. In an instant, the aroma surged out, and the offal seemed to be jumping around, attracting everyone's attention. The surrounding people let out a series of exclamations and praises. With a toss of the spatula, it landed into the black wok with a loud clang. Fei Jin wiped off the water stains on his hands and chuckled. He placed his nose in front of the stir-fried beef offal and took a deep breath. Instantly, the rich aroma caused him to squint his eyes in elation. The fats on his face began to jiggle. Hee, perfect. This brat is going to lose for sure. Even if I have to use the heaven and earth obsidian flame, this chef will torture you until you doubt your life. With his hands behind his back, Fei Jin raised his head and shook his third-grade chef robe, his face full of arrogance. He looked at Bufang with a face full of disdain. As for Bufang, his face was still as calm as ever. He only glanced at Fei Jin with an expressionless face. He raised his palm and pressed it against the black turtle constellation wok, and his mental energy surged out like a tidal wave. The invisible mental energy fluctuation caused the smile on Fei Jin's face to freeze, and his face was filled with bewilderment. However, it didn't matter to him. So what if it was like this? Could it be that the egg custard cooked by this brat was heaven-defying? 3, 2, 1. Phew, done. Bufang counted silently in his heart. Suddenly, he let out a light breath, and the corners of his mouth curled up. With a slight bend of his finger, he flicked the black turtle constellation wok. The tightly sealed lid of the black turtle constellation wok instantly opened up like a blooming flower. Chapter 646. The lid of the black turtle constellation wok was slowly lifted off in front of the crowd. It was as if the petals of the epiphyllum were quietly blooming. As the petals bloomed, beams of light shot out from within and shot into the sky. Its beauty amazed many people and made many people sigh in admiration. A dish that could glow? Many people held their breaths as they stared at the dish in the black turtle constellation wok with their eyes wide open. Fei Jin held on to his stir-fried beef offal, which was still emitting hot steam and a fragrant aroma, and couldn't help but stare at the black turtle constellation wok. The beams of light and the rising steam gave him a bad premonition. The wok was lifted. Bufang glanced at Fei Jin from the corner of his eyes. In the next moment, he reached out his hand towards the egg soup in the black turtle constellation wok. Everyone looked at Bufang with astonishment. Their hearts were filled with anticipation for Bufang's egg soup. A dish that can glow. It's quite magical. I've never seen a dish that can glow. Perhaps it'll be delicious. Is Chef Fei Jin going to lose? Chef Fei Jin is a third-grade chef. The diners started to chatter subconsciously. They didn't know why, but their confidence in Fei Jin had almost disappeared the moment the glow appeared. They couldn't explain why they were having such a strange feeling. The little girl, Xiaoya, stared blankly at Bufang. She was the closest to Bufang, so when the egg fragrance appeared, she couldn't help but close her eyes. The beautiful lady crossed her arms and sneered coldly from afar. She didn't believe that a brat who came out to protect a stupid little girl would be able to defeat the #1 chef of their restaurant. Bufang reached his hand into the black turtle constellation Wa. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, he slowly lifted the blue and white porcelain bowl out of the wok. Everyone looked at the blue and white porcelain bowl and couldn't help but let out a series of gasps. That bowl was really beautiful. It was as if it had turned into a glaze, and the blue and white flowers on it seemed to have come alive. Under the illumination of the heat and radiance, they slowly flowed, creating a beautiful sight. However, the most eye-catching thing was the egg custard in the blue and white porcelain bowl. The egg custard was pale yellow and its surface was as smooth as a mirror, without a single flaw. Dense steam and a rich fragrance flowed on its surface, as if a gust of wind was gently blowing past. As the egg fragrance gradually thickened, everyone couldn't help but close their eyes and take in a deep breath. The silky fragrance of the egg drilled into his nostrils, stirring up his appetite and stirring up his emotions. It smells so good. Why did it smell so good? Many people felt that it was rather unbelievable, and they exclaimed in their hearts, How can you smell so good? Fei Jin held onto his plate of stir-fried beef offal as the fats on his face jiggled. He stared at Bufang in disbelief as he stammered. Egg custard was not a difficult dish at all. In the Valley of Gluttony, almost every household knew how to make egg custard. Hence, when he found out that Bufang had taken out the egg custard to have a chef's challenge with him, he was laughing hysterically in his heart. However, when Bufang finished cooking the egg custard, he was shocked. Was this really King egg custard? This is definitely not egg custard. Fei Jin roared. The shock in his eyes lingered for a long time. Are you stupid? If it's not glazed egg custard, then I lose, Bufang said with a faint smile on his face. That playful gaze caused Fei Jin's face to turn green and red. Damn it. If it's really egg custard, do you think this chef will be afraid of you? It's just a bowl of egg custard. Do you think you can cook it well? Fei Jin roared as the veins on his neck popped out. The beautiful lady ordered someone to bring a table over and placed it in between Bufang and Fei Jin. Fei Jin placed the stir-fried beef offal on the table with a loud thud. Under the reflection of the light, the fragrant beef offal was glistening with oil, giving off a mesmerizing luster. She was just like a sexy dancer, attracting everyone's attention. As for Bufang, he placed the egg custard on the table calmly, without the slightest bit of panic. The blue and white porcelain bowl of egg custard was emitting a faint yellow luster, with misty steam swirling around it. The mirror-like surface of the egg constantly reflected the light, attracting everyone's attention. The faint yellow egg custard seemed to be translucent, as beautiful as a colored glaze. It looked like a crystal, a gem, or a mystical jade, causing everyone to gasp in admiration. It was just like a beautiful lady wearing a white dress playing the flute, standing in the bamboo forest. Under the gentle breeze of the bamboo, her long hair fluttered in the wind. A bowl of egg custard was tranquil and peaceful. These were two dishes with completely different styles. The diners looked at each other in dismay. No one would have thought that in this chef's challenge, there would be two dishes with completely different styles. How were they going to start eating? The beef offal was fiery, while the egg custard was elegant. The two dishes intertwined on the table, causing everyone to be hesitant when choosing which dish to eat. What are you hesitating for? Chef Fei Jin has finished cooking first, so naturally, we should taste his stir-fried beef offal first. The beautiful lady sneered from afar. Her phoenix eyes seemed to be looking at Bufang with a hint of mockery. Dishes with such different styles were competing on the first impression given to the diners. If the first dish to taste was the egg custard, then the stir-fried beef offal might really win. However, if the first dish was the stir-fried beef offal, the beautiful lady believed that this kid would not have the slightest chance of winning. A mouthful of stir-fried beef offal, that sourness, was not something that a bowl of egg custard could wash away. Xiao Yu was also a little anxious. She stood behind Bufang and wanted to say something. However, Bufang raised his hand and lightly patted her head, instantly stopping her from speaking. "All right, let's taste the beef offal first." "It doesn't matter," Bufang said. Everyone looked at Bufang with strange gazes. This kid was really too careless. Not only did he use egg custard to compete with the beef offal, but he actually wanted the diners to choose the beef offal first. This was really stupid. "Kid, you are really arrogant. However, I don't know if you have the right to be arrogant." Fei Jin slapped his own belly, causing the fat on his belly to jiggle. In the next moment, the diners stopped talking and lined up one by one. One by one, they picked up their chopsticks and picked up the stir-fried beef offal. A mouthful of beef offal was extremely sour and refreshing. All the diners could not help but nod their heads. After eating, they even stuck out their tongues and licked their lip. The spiciness of the beef offal caused their faces to turn slightly red. Although the spiciness was spicy, it was not unbearably spicy. The perfect degree of spiciness was the most precious and also the most attractive to the diners. This was the reason why Fei Jin's stir-fried beef offal could help the restaurant become the #1 restaurant in the village. After the diners finished eating the beef offal, everyone seemed to be absent-minded. They did not seem to have much desire for Bufang's egg custard. This was exactly what Xiao Yu was worried about. However, when she looked at Bufang, she realized that Bufang had always been calm. That calmness made people want to beat him up. Bufang even pulled a chair over and leaned on it, letting out a light breath. "All right, after tasting the beef offal, it's my egg custard's turn. Line up one by one. Remember, don't fight over it." "Don't fight over it?" Everyone was astonished. The beautiful woman's proud smile froze on her face. She had never seen such a shameless person. "Who the F***ck is fighting over your egg custard? Do you think someone is going to fight over your egg custard? Are you crazy?" Fei Jin was also stunned by Bufang's words. The fat on his face trembled as his gaze turned cold. "Fight over the egg custard? Where did you get your confidence from? Hurry up and eat." Bufang sat on the chair and played with his slender and fair fingers. He did not even lift his eyes as he said this calmly. Fei Jin was instantly stunned. He was so angry that his stomach was trembling. The diners also wore a smile that was not a smile on their faces. The crowd lined up, each of them holding a porcelain ladle in their hands. The first person stood in front of the piping hot egg custard. His mouth was still filled with the aftertaste of the beef offal. However, looking at the beautiful egg custard, he was a little reluctant to eat it. He was afraid of this rare beauty and beauty. This egg custard was like a sober and refined beauty that they could not bear to desecrate. "Let's eat," Bufang said as he glanced at the first customer. The diner was stunned. In the next moment, he scooped up the egg custard. The egg custard, which was as soft as tofu, was instantly shattered. The beautiful mirror surface was broken, and a rich fragrance instantly rushed out from the crack. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. White steam gushed out and directly sprayed onto the first diner's face. The diner could not help but take a deep breath of intoxication as his face turned red. So fragrant. This overwhelming fragrance was out of everyone's expectations. No one would have thought that after scooping up the egg custard, the fragrance would be so strong. Fei Jin's eyes narrowed. Whoosh! As the egg custard was scooped up, the white and tender egg custard quivered slightly. The diner's nostrils widened. Looking at the glass-like egg custard, he could not help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. Ah! As soon as the egg custard entered his mouth, the diner's eyes instantly widened as his pupils shrank. White steam seemed to rush out from his nostrils. The egg custard seemed to be bouncing around in his mouth, causing his body to tremble uncontrollably. Tranquil and fresh? Like a fresh and refined beauty? It's all AF * King Lie. The taste of this egg custard was incomparably strong. That diner felt as though he was being wrapped up by the eggshell. As soon as the egg custard entered his mouth, the eggshell would shatter. His entire body seemed to have transformed into a chicken that wanted to spread its wings and soar into the sky. Alright, the next one. Take your time, don't fight over it. Bufang glanced at the intoxicated diner and said calmly. That diner regained his senses, his face was filled with anxiety. No. Let me have another taste. Just one more. The diner behind him seemed to have thought of something as he slapped that diner to the ground. Fight over your sister. After saying that, he cautiously reached out his spoon like the first diner. Whoosh! The jelly-like egg custard seemed to be bouncing on the spoon as its rich fragrance permeated the air, causing one to be intoxicated. Crazy! This group of people must have gone crazy. Fei Jin looked at the group of people fighting over a bowl of egg custard as beads of perspiration formed on his forehead. He didn't believe it, he didn't dare to believe it. After eating his stir-fried beef offal, why did this group of people still eat the egg custard that was as bland as water? Was a bowl of egg custard that magical? What? You don't believe me? Bufang leaned back on his chair as he saw Fei Jin's face filled with disbelief. Fei Jin's eyes widened. If you don't believe me, then try it, Bufang said. He turned around to look at the egg custard and raised his eyebrows. Oh, the egg custard has already been snatched. I've already told them to stop. Looking at Bufang's serious expression, Fei Jin felt as though an invisible slap had landed on his face. Chapter 647. Fei Jin's entire body began to tremble. This was because he realized that the outcome of this chef's challenge was obvious. He had become the loser, the true loser. From the expressions of the diners, it was clear that Bufang's bowl of egg custard had defeated his stir-fried beef offal in an instant. Although it was unbelievable, it seemed to be the truth. As an experienced chef, he could easily discern the diners' feelings towards the dish from their expressions. After eating his stir-fried beef offal, the diners once again tried Bufang's egg custard. However, the blissful expressions on their faces completely overwhelmed the expressions of the diners when they were eating his stir-fried beef offal. This caused his heart to tremble slightly. Without a doubt, he had lost. This chef's challenge, which was supposed to be in the bag, had been defeated. The surrounding diners had also recovered from their daze from the deliciousness of Bufang's egg custard. Everyone looked at Fei Jin with a hint of pity in their eyes, while they looked at Bufang with a look of utter disbelief. In the Valley of Gluttony, the rules of the chef's challenge could easily detect the evaluation of each diner's dish after tasting it. Hence, the fairness of the chef's challenge was unquestionable. At this moment, the oath of gluttony had already begun to be fulfilled. Fei Jin's face was filled with horror as he looked at the radiance that had suddenly risen from his body. The radiance rapidly condensed above his head, and quickly transformed into a gigantic shadow of a gigantic beast. The gigantic beast had a gigantic mouth that seemed to be able to swallow the heavens. Just looking at it would cause one's hair to stand on end. On the other hand, Bufang's body also began to emit a dazzling radiance. The radiance was incomparably gentle, and it was the glory that belonged to the victor. The chef's challenge has ended. Bufang wins, Fei Jin loses. The punishment of the oath of gluttony has begun. Fei Jin has lost the chef's challenge. He will be stripped of his right to cook and his kitchen knife, never to cook again. The deafening sound resounded in everyone's ears like the evening drum and morning bell. Upon hearing the oath, Fei Jin's entire body turned cold. In the next moment, his entire body went limp and collapsed onto the ground. Above his head, a ray of brilliance shot up into the sky. The oath instantly turned into a thread and descended into the space between Fei Jin's brows. Fei Jin's eyes instantly lost their luster as he collapsed onto the ground. Fei Jin was completely dumbfounded. He was actually very familiar with the results of this chef's challenge. He had participated in a chef's challenge before, and he had also emerged victorious. However, he had never imagined that he would be defeated by a young man this time. He had been defeated in a chef's challenge. This cruel chef's challenge had deprived him of his right to cook, making him lose his kitchen knife. He was no longer a chef. Buzz, the pitch-black dark steel kitchen knife in his hand suddenly flew out, as if it was carried by an invisible force, flying toward Bufang. This was the cleaver that belonged to Fei Jin. Although it was not a very precious cleaver, its value was not low either. It had accompanied Fei Jin throughout his long career as a chef. Bufang reached out and received the cleaver. The dark steel kitchen knife was rather heavy, but in Bufang's hands, it was as light as a feather. Compared to the black cleaver in Bufang's kitchen, this cleaver was actually very light. Frowning slightly, Bufang glanced at the lifeless Fei Jin, then looked at the dark steel kitchen knife in his hand, and let out a light breath. With a thought, a knife cabinet that seemed to be propped up by crystals slowly appeared. Opening the cabinet, Bufang placed the dark steel kitchen knife at the bottom of the cabinet. Seeing Bufang take out the knife cabinet, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Everyone's gaze towards Bufang was filled with terror. That guy actually has a knife cabinet? The surrounding crowd was incomparably shocked. Even Fei Jin looked at Bufang in disbelief, and his entire body trembled. Knife cabinets were something that only second-grade chefs could possess. This was because at the level of second-grade chefs, their cleavers would almost all possess spirituality. Only those cleavers with spirituality would have the capital to collect them, and only then would they be able to feel proud after defeating their opponent in a chef's challenge. Fei Jin did not think that Bufang would actually take out a knife cabinet. If he had known that Bufang had a knife cabinet, he would not have chosen to have a chef's challenge with Bufang even if he was beaten to death. He was not an idiot to actually challenge a second-grade chef in a chef's challenge. Thinking up to this point, Fei Jin's gaze towards Bufang became somewhat venomous. He felt that Bufang had deceived him. If Bufang had revealed his culinary skills earlier, he would not have challenged Bufang in a chef's challenge. Suddenly, everyone was stunned once again. Because in their eyes, there was actually a kitchen knife with a faint blue radiance lying quietly in the middle of the ghost. That kitchen knife was emitting a chilling aura, causing everyone's hair to stand on end. That's Chef Wenrencho's icy soul kitchen knife. Chef Wenrencho is an outsider of our Valley of Gluttony. Why would his kitchen knife be here? Someone pointed at the icy soul kitchen knife in horror. Some of them were even more bewildered. However, Bufang did not let them stare at it for too long. With a wave of his hand, the knife cabinet disappeared without a trace. As the radiance dissipated, the entire room returned to its original tranquility. However, at this moment, everyone held their breaths as they stared at Bufang in shock. This young man in front of them was actually a second-grade chef. He was definitely a chef on the tablet of gluttony. This kind of chef had the qualifications to open a restaurant in the Gluttony God City. Who would have thought that such an existence would actually come to this restaurant to have a chef's challenge with Fei Jin? Everyone felt sorry for Fei Jin. Of all the people he could have offended, he had to offend a second-grade chef. The beautiful woman's face turned pale, and her eyes became sluggish. Lost? Chef Fei Jin actually lost? This was like a fantasy story. The backbone of their restaurant had actually lost to a young man in a chef's challenge. Failing in a chef's challenge meant that Fei Jin had lost his right to cook. Unless there was someone powerful willing to cover up the oath of gluttony, Fei Jin would never be a chef again. In just a split second, he was sent flying from afar into the endless abyss. Ordinary people would not be able to withstand such ups and downs. Fei Jin was also an ordinary person. Even though he was a third-grade chef, the feeling of falling from the sky was enough to drive him into despair. Bufang glanced at the dazed Fei Jin from the corner of his eyes, then glanced at the beautiful woman. He turned around and patted the little lowly Xiaoya, who was standing rooted to the ground in shock. Xiaoya had no idea what had just happened, and he walked away. Xiaoya was in a daze for a while before she hurriedly took big strides to catch up. The surrounding people had also regained their senses. In an instant, many of their faces were filled with fanaticism. This was a second-grade chef. If they could recruit him into their restaurant, it would definitely become one of the top restaurants in the village. The importance of a good chef to a restaurant was undeniable. For a moment, everyone rushed out of the restaurant and followed Bufang. Many of them were trying to persuade Bufang, but Bufang didn't seem to mind. Only Fei Jin was left kneeling on the ground with a dazed expression. He had lost. He had lost his right to cook. He was no longer the glorious pillar of the restaurant. He had collapsed. "It's all that damned brat's fault." Fei Jin suddenly raised his head. The muscles on his face were trembling violently. He looked at the beautiful woman who was rooted to the ground. "It's all that bastard's fault. I'm going to kill him. Are you going to help me?" Fei Jin gritted his teeth. The beautiful woman seemed to have been awoken by Fei Jin's murderous words. She immediately ran out of the restaurant as if she had suddenly realized something. "Kill? Kill your head. He's now a second-grade chef that no one dares to approach. As long as I can rope him in, my restaurant will still be the #1 restaurant in the village. As for you, damned fatty, the restaurant has been treating you well for the past few years. With your savings, you should be able to live a good life in the village," the beautiful woman said as she glanced at Fei Jin. She twisted her waist and chased after Bufang's departing figure. On the entire second floor, only Fei Jin was left kneeling on the ground. Fei Jin roared as he crawled up from the ground and smashed his fist on the stove. "I'll definitely kill you." Fei Jin was infuriated and resentful. Bufang rejected all the restaurant's invitations. He was someone who owned a restaurant. Naturally, he wouldn't become a chef in any restaurant. His goal was to become the master chef who stood at the top of the food chain in the fantasy world. He didn't want to become a chef in any restaurant. A real chef's dishes were meant to be delightful. The main reason why Fei Jin lost was because he had cooked too many dishes in a routine manner. He had long lost his passion for food. He had become numb when it came to cooking, and the dishes he cooked were naturally without emotions. Xiaoya followed beside Bufang. Bufang had asked her to lead the way to the Glutton God City. Hence, the two of them were now walking in the direction of the Glutton God City. Bufang needed to hunt the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish. However, Xiaoya knew that a high-grade ingredient like the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish couldn't be hunted in the village. They had to enter the Glutton God City. The spirit beasts of the Sunset Lake were all gathered there. Coincidentally, the Glutton God City was hosting the Glutton Gods banquet. Bufang could also enter and taste the delicacies there. Although the dishes in the village were not bad, they were still lacking. According to Xiaoya, the real delicacies of the Valley of Gluttony were in the Glutton God City. Only the chefs on the Tablet of Gluttony could open their restaurants there. The two of them walked for a long time. After leaving the village's boundary, they entered the stone road along the lake. Following this road, they could get close to the Glutton God City. After all, the Glutton God City was the center of the Valley of Gluttony. It was incomparably grand. Above the sky, there were constantly experts whizzing past. They were the experts who had come from outside the valley to attend the Glutton Gods banquet. Terrifying energy constantly rumbled in the sky. Some experts rode on their swords. Some experts soared in the air. There were also powerhouses who walked barefoot on the red silk. They all dashed toward the grand city in the distance, as if tens of thousands of people had gathered. The sky gradually darkened. In the sky, the sun was setting in the west. The light of the setting sun shone down, elongating the shadows of Bu Fong and Xiao Ye. It was as if their shadows had extended into the lake, reflecting the sparkling light. All of a sudden, Bu Fong halted his steps, furrowing his brows. Around him, terrifying gusts of wind suddenly howled. "Who is it? Come out," Bu Fong said casually. Xiao Ye's heart tightened. She hid behind Bu Fong. In the distance, a fat figure slowly walked out from the crowd. His face was filled with malevolence. Trying to run after acting tough? My, Fei Jin's chef's challenge is not that easy to win. Chapter 648. Fei Jin? Bu Fong looked at Fei Jin, who was slowly walking out from the crowd, and furrowed his brows. Was he planning to settle scores with him? Was he looking for him because he lost the chef's challenge? Looking at the approaching figures, Bu Fong let out a sigh of relief. As he stepped onto the ground, his vermilion robe fluttered in the air. He opened his arms and pressed the little girl, Xiao Ye, behind him. His gaze was indifferent as he looked around. Fei Jin's face was filled with malevolence, and his eyes were filled with madness. He had lost the chef's challenge, which meant that his career as a chef had come to an end. Even his kitchen knife had been taken away, leaving him with nothing. He originally had the chance to enter the tablet of gluttony, but because of this brat, he had lost everything. He felt as though his heart was about to shatter, and the heartache was indescribable. Hence, he wanted Bu Fong to die. He wanted Bu Fong, who had caused all of this to happen, to die completely. Only the death of the instigator would be able to dispel the anger in his heart. He knew that Bu Fong was extraordinary, as he was able to challenge someone of a higher realm with just a black walk. However, he did not believe that this brat, who had broken through one shackle of the Supreme Being Divine Physique Echelon, would be able to fight against a peak Divine Physique Echelon expert with just a black walk. Among the people that he had called over, one of them was a peak Divine Physique Echelon expert. In order to ensure that nothing went wrong, he had put in a lot of effort. Therefore, at this moment, when he looked at Bu Fong, his eyes were bloodshot. Peak Divine Physique Echelon, Bu Fong furrowed his brows, and his eyes were filled with a hint of seriousness. If Xiao Bai or you were here, a mere Peak Divine Physique Echelon expert would not be a problem at all. However, he was the only one here, and he still had to protect the little girl behind him. Hence, Bu Fong felt a headache coming on. Of course, Bu Fong could also choose to use the gourmet array. However, setting up the gourmet array required time, and his opponent would obviously not give him the time to do so. Kill him! The fats on Fei Jin's body jiggled wildly, and the muscles on his face twitched as he let out a loud roar. The eyes of one of the experts behind him flickered as he unleashed his true energy. Terrifying true energy twisted and turned in the air, causing numerous chains of true energy to sway. Walala! The shackles collided, seeming as though they were about to tear the void apart. This was the terrifying pressure of someone at the peak of the divine body echelon. Rumble! That expert's face was grave and stern. He did not speak, but he looked at Bu Fong with a hint of mockery. As for the fact that Fei Jin had wasted a favor to hire him just to deal with a divine physique echelon who had broken through one of the Supreme Being's shackles, he felt that it was rather laughable. A mere divine physique echelon who had broken through one of the Supreme Being's shackles should be more than enough for Fei Jin to handle. He actually wasted this favor. However, this was good as well. It was not a big deal to owe someone a favor, and it was good to settle it. Therefore, he did his best. As his true energy surged, it was as though a gale had been raised. The surface of the sunset lake rippled slightly, as though it was suppressing something. Bu Fong took a step back. The velvet rope that tied his hair was blown away by the gust of true energy and immediately snapped, causing his hair to flutter in the air. The vermilion robe on his body fluttered in the wind, and the red radiance on it seemed as though it was about to ignite. Bufang took a deep breath, raised his slender, fair palm and waved it slightly. Instantly, a bowl of steaming hot rampage ramen fell into his hands. The expert who had just attacked was stunned. This brat was actually eating delicacies during a battle? Who was he looking down on? However, he had heard that this brat had defeated Fei Jin in a chef's challenge. This brat's culinary skills must be pretty good. However, since he had already offended Bufang, he could no longer hold back. He had to eliminate the root of the problem. As he thought of this, the murderous intent in the eyes of the divine physique echelon expert intensified. Boom! The bluestone slabs on the ground were about to crumble under the pressure. A terrifying pressure landed on Bufang's body, and Bufang was about to be pressed onto the ground. Xiaoya timidly stood behind Bufang, and her face was flushed red from the pressure. Although Bufang had helped her block off most of the pressure, the small portion of it still made her feel extremely uncomfortable. Slurp. After finishing the ramen, Bufang expressionlessly stared at the expert who was charging at him. He wiped the corners of his mouth as he felt the true energy within his body boiling, and his aura was rising steadily. The black turtle constellation walk was taken out, and it expanded in size as it smashed toward the expert. A loud boom resounded. The divine physique echelon expert's eyes narrowed, and he took a step back. The black turtle constellation walk spun and fell back into Bufang's hands, and Bufang held it in his palm. Bufang's expression was indifferent. Although he had only broken through one of the Supreme Being's shackles, his current battle prowess was much stronger than before. With a flip of his hand, a steaming hot beef meatball appeared. He lightly tossed it into the air and bit into it. The oily juice splattered everywhere, causing the surrounding experts to stare with their mouths agape. Fei Jin's face was also filled with astonishment. This fellow was actually eating in the midst of a battle? He was indeed as arrogant as ever. As the vigorous beef meatball entered his stomach, Bufang couldn't help but furrow his brows. He could feel the strength in his arms rising rapidly, and his eyes lit up with a divine glow. Holding the black turtle constellation walk in one hand, Bufang took a step forward, and his figure burst forth. There was a whoosh sound. The black turtle constellation walk slashed through the air, as though it was about to shatter the air. The expert's expression froze, and the 5 chains swayed as though they were entangled together. His muscles bulged as he punched the black turtle constellation walk. Bang bang bang! Bufang felt as though there was an inexhaustible amount of energy within his body. That expert was actually forced back by Bufang's walk. The surrounding people sucked in a breath of cold air as they stared at Bufang as though they were looking at a monster. Where did this terrifying existence come from? He was actually able to forcefully break through one of the Supreme Being's shackles and fight against a peak divine physique echelon expert. Fei Jin's entire body trembled as he felt a sense of disbelief and despair. Impossible! Kill him! We must kill him! Fei Jin roared. All of a sudden, his eyes shifted and landed on the petite little girl in the distance. The malevolent expression on his face instantly changed, becoming extremely terrifying. There was a whoosh sound. His figure tore through the air and appeared in front of the little girl in an instant. Xiaoya looked at Fei Jin with a face full of fear. The shadow cast by Fei Jin's gigantic body had completely obscured her figure. Bufang glanced in Xiaoya's direction and furrowed his brows as a cold intent flashed across his eyes. He took a step forward and his figure instantly shot forward in an attempt to stop Fei Jin from attacking Xiaoya. However, the peak divine physique echelon expert invited by Fei Jin was already enraged. He was actually being suppressed by an ant. This was already a huge loss of face. If he still allowed Bufang to escape, he should really find a block of tofu and knock himself to death. Hence, a piercing sound could be heard. The 5 shackles swayed and fell down at the same time. The peak divine physique echelon expert stood in front of Bufang, his face extremely gloomy. You must have used some kind of secret technique to increase your combat strength, right? Since that's the case, you must die this time. A secret technique that could allow a divine physique echelon expert who had broken through one of the Supreme Being's shackles to fight against a peak divine physique echelon expert was definitely extraordinary. This meant that Bufang's background was also extraordinary. Since he had already offended such a person, he had to be completely obliterated. He couldn't leave any traces behind. Otherwise, he would definitely suffer from revenge. Scram! Bufang stared coldly at the expert and said indifferently. The expert's mouth twitched as he punched out with his fist. Bufang furrowed his brows. The golden dragon bone kitchen knife instantly turned into a green smoke that curled up, almost solidifying into a solid substance. The golden radiance was dazzling, as though the knife was made of pure gold. Bufang wielded the incomparably sharp golden dragon bone kitchen knife and swung it horizontally towards the expert. Fei Jin stared coldly at Xiaoya. Looking at this foolish brat, the rage in his heart boiled. If it wasn't for this brat, he wouldn't have had a chef's challenge with Bufang. If he didn't have a chef's challenge with Bufang, he wouldn't have been deprived of his right to cook. The cause of everything was this foolish brat. Bufang had to die, and this brat had to die as well. Fei Jin attacked. This time, he didn't show any mercy. He wanted to slap this brat to death with a single slap. True energy pervaded the air as it condensed in his palm, causing it to become somewhat hazy. However, the power contained within that hazy aura was extremely terrifying. If this slap landed, this brat might not even have a corpse left. Xiaoya seemed to be aware of this. Although she was still young, her mind was already rather mature. Ever since the death of her loving grandfather, she had experienced too much. She bit her lips tightly as her big eyes stared fixedly at Fei Jin's palm. Deep within her pupils was the reflection of that palm filled with killing intent. Rumble within the sunset lake, waves suddenly surged and rolled. Water splashed up into the sky, setting off monstrous waves. The waves then turned into rainwater, turning into a majestic downpour. The rain shrouded everyone within it, causing everyone to be slightly taken aback. Fei Jin's heart skipped a beat. His palm was positioned above Xiaoya's head, and he wanted to slap downwards. However, he realized that he couldn't do so no matter how hard he tried. What was going on? Fei Jin's heart skipped a beat. He met the little brat's gaze. That gaze caused all the fats on his body to tremble, just like a ferocious beast. How terrifying! How could it be so terrifying? As the lake water splashed onto his body, it suddenly seemed to have transformed into a giant hand that tightly gripped onto his neck, causing him to have difficulty breathing. Fei Jin's pupils shrank as he stared at the little brat who had undergone a drastic change. His entire body went limp and slumped onto the ground. From afar, Bufang had also noticed the changes in Xiaoya. His eyebrows twitched as he sucked in a breath of cold air. The sunset lake seemed to be resonating with Xiaoya's transformation. Following the change in Xiaoya's aura, the lake water continued to boil. Within the lake, terrifying gazes shot out from within. Those were the powerful spirit beasts of the sunset lake. However, this was not the focus of Bufang's attention. Bufang looked at Xiaoya. He sucked in a deep breath. This was because at this moment, Xiaoya's appearance had undergone a complete transformation. She had transformed into a mysterious spirit beast that was shrouded in dark energy. A human's palm reached out. However, the skin was pitch black, and it emitted a chilling glow. As it slammed down viciously, Fei Jin, whose face was filled with fear, was instantly smashed into minced meat. Shattered. Everyone was shocked, and their hearts were filled with a chill. In the next moment, the spirit beast that was shrouded in dark energy turned its head violently, and its scarlet eyes landed on Bufang and the others. The peak divine physique echelon expert, who was originally facing off against Bufang, was instantly frightened to the point that he fell to the ground on his buttock. He stretched out his hands in terror. He was still mumbling in fear, Tao. Tao Tai? Chapter 649. Valley of Gluttony, Lakeside Buildings of the Sunset Lake. The incense slowly lingered, rising in a straight line. Then, it spread out, filling the surroundings. A tranquil feeling lingered in the entire room. The sounds of the zither were like small and big pearls falling on a jade plate. An old man, wearing a loose robe with long sleeves like a fan, sat cross-legged on the ground. The incense was slowly burning in front of him. To the side of the incense was a boiling purple clay kettle. Steam rose from the mouth of the kettle. The gurgling sound made the lid of the purple clay kettle tremble slightly. The old man lifted his sleeve with one hand, using a teacup to scoop up some crushed tea leaves. Although the tea leaves were crushed, they still emitted a bright luster. The patterns on them moved, and spirit energy gushed out. With one look, one could tell that it was an extraordinary item. After scooping the tea leaves into a purple clay cup, the old man lifted the boiling purple clay kettle. Swish! Clear and steaming hot water flowed out of the pot and poured into the teacup, causing the jade green tea leaves to swirl within the cup. A clear and cold tea fragrance quickly spread throughout the entire room. When the tea in the teacup became emerald green, the old man poured the tea away. Once again, he poured the boiling hot water, causing the tea leaves to swirl once more. Closing the lid of the teacup, the old man crossed his arms, quietly waiting. The sound of the zither slowly flowed in the room, and it was somewhat leisurely. After a while, the old man opened the lid of the teacup, brought it to his nose, and took a sniff. The faint tea aroma lingered in his nose. The old man's white beard and white eyebrows slightly trembled, and his wrinkled face revealed a satisfied expression. He poured a cup of clear green tea, raised his hand, and raised the small teacup, intending to take a sip. However, just as the tea was brought to his mouth, outside the window, the sunset lake, which was originally sparkling and tranquil like an ancient well, suddenly changed. Raging waves rose on the surface of the lake, and countless huge black shadows appeared. A terrifying aura spread out, as if a terrifying giant beast was about to awaken. A gust of black chi shot into the sky, causing the old man's narrowed eyes to suddenly open. A glint flashed across the old man's eyes, followed by a terrifying shock. Kacha! The teacup in his hand cracked, and the fragrant tea immediately flowed out from the cracks, splashing all over the floor. The cup shattered and fell to the ground. But the old man turned his head to look out the window as if he didn't know what was going on. This aura? That sealed child? Tao Tai? Bufang couldn't help but frown when he saw the terrified look on the peak divine physique echelon expert's face. Bufang could clearly hear that expert's murmur. Tao Tai? The little girl was Tao Tai? How was this possible? Bufang looked at the blood-red eyes that caused goosebumps to appear all over his body. The murderous aura and murderous intent caused goosebumps to form all over Bufang's body. A pitch-black palm, a pitch-black arm, and a rising dark aura. At this moment, the little girl seemed to have turned into a murderous beast that only knew how to kill. Fei Jin was dead. He was clawed to death by the monster's claws, and his entire head exploded. He couldn't be more dead. Perhaps, even until his death, he didn't know how he died. He couldn't imagine how a stupid little girl that he could trample on could turn into such a terrifying beast. The surrounding people also looked at the monster that was enveloped by the dark aura with fear. The peak divine physique echelon expert sucked in a breath of cold air. He looked at the demonized little girl as if he had recalled something horrifying. He held his tongue and did not continue to speak. He looked at the monster in fear, then turned around and planned to escape without looking back. The little girl tilted her head, and her face couldn't be seen clearly because of the dark aura. However, her pitch-black skin sent chills down one's spine, and her eyes were like those of a ferocious beast. Whoosh! A loud explosion resounded, and the air seemed to explode as the monster charged forward. Bang, bang, bang! One by one, human figures exploded, and their heads were crushed by the pitch-black palm. The speed of the attack was unimaginable, and no one could react at all. These divine physique echelon experts didn't even know how they died. The peak divine physique echelon expert who was about to escape turned around and saw the exploding corpses. His entire body was covered in sweat. It really is that monster. The peak divine physique echelon expert's body trembled, and he didn't want to think anymore. True energy erupted without any regard for his life, and his speed increased as he tore through the air to escape. However, very quickly, his figure came to a halt, because a pitch-black palm had already pierced through his chest, and his heart was directly crushed by the monster. Crack! It was as if there was a cracking sound. The peak divine physique echelon expert's pupils shrank to the size of a sesame seed. The 5 swaying shackles above his head slowly cracked. With a cracking sound, the shackles all collapsed. The peak divine physique echelon expert fell to the ground, and his life energy disappeared. He died. After slaughtering this group of experts, the little girl, who was wrapped in the dark aura, slowly turned her head. Her scarlet eyes locked onto Bufang's body. Bufang frowned, and his heart couldn't help but tighten. Taotai. This little girl was actually the incarnation of Taotai? Rumble! In the sunset lake, water splashed, as if a giant beast was rushing out of the lake. The black shadow that blotted out the sky shocked everyone. The terrifying giant beast that was curled up in the lake popped its head out, and its huge eyes locked onto the little girl who was wrapped in the dark aura. It opened its mouth and let out a roar. Roar! The lake water exploded with this roar. When the countless experts in the Valley of Gluttony saw this giant beast, their eyes shrank, and they sucked in a breath of cold air. What exactly happened? Even this gigantic beast was lured out. Around this giant beast, fish leaped out of the water. The water shimmered, and the bodies of these fish bloomed with splendor. The heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish? When Bufang saw these fish leaping out, he was instantly surprised. This was the target of his trip to the Valley of Gluttony, the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish. The terrifying giant beast opened its huge mouth, which seemed to be able to swallow the world. With a roar, the surrounding lake surface exploded, and the water splashed up to the sky, as if it had turned into a torrential rain, pouring down in torrents. That mouth was so big, and it was filled with layers of sharp teeth. The little girl, who was wrapped in the dark aura, shifted her scarlet eyes from Bufang to the giant beast. Roar! The pitch-black arms slammed on the ground, causing the ground to tremble. The little girl, who was wrapped in the dark aura, opened her mouth, facing the giant beast, and let out a shrill cry. The shrill cry was so sharp that it made Bufang's brows slightly furrow. It was really ear-piercing. Following the little girl's shrill cry, the giant beast's roar gradually weakened. In the end, its huge mouth closed, and with a gulp, it actually went back to the bottom of the lake, running away and disappearing. After the little girl's shrill cry, the dark aura on her body gradually dispersed, and her pitch-black arms returned to their normal color. In the end, the dark aura completely disappeared, and the little girl, Xiaoya, also changed back. However, after changing back, Xiaoya directly fell to the ground. When the little girl screamed, Bufang's heart felt a little pressured. However, after the little girl changed back, this pressure gradually disappeared. He gently exhaled. He walked over to the little girl on the ground and picked her up. It seemed that because of the movement, Xiaoya was startled awake. The little girl opened her eyes, looking around suspiciously. Her eyes were filled with confusion. Obviously, she didn't know what she had done just now. A ripping sound rang out. In the sky, the sound of breaking air rang out. There was the neighing of spirit beasts. There was the deafening rumble of wheels. There was the sound of splashing air, and there was the sound of red silk swaying. Countless experts rushed over. However, everything had already calmed down. The sunset lake, which was originally undulating with waves, gradually became ripples, and the giant black shadow sank to the bottom of the lake. What happened just now? Everyone's faces were filled with doubt. They looked around, but they didn't find anything suspicious. There was only the messy corpses on the ground. Could it be that the giant beast just wanted to kill these ants? Many experts thought to themselves. The only ones who survived were Bufang and Xiaoya, who had just woken up and was still in a daze. Many people glanced at Bufang, and when they discovered Bufang's low strength, the corners of their mouths curled up. In the next instant, with faint disdain, they soared into the sky and disappeared. Some people looked deeply at Bufang and the little girl in Bufang's arms, then turned around and left. This sudden incident finally came to an end. These experts from the various forces and holy lands all turned around and soared into the sky. A mere ant that had broken through one of the Supreme Being's shackles wasn't worth their attention. Since they didn't find anything, the group of people quickly left. However, after these experts from the various forces and holy lands left, an old and stooped figure appeared. This old man had a stooped back, and the wrinkles on his face were like ravines. He wore a loose robe, and his entire person seemed small. He floated in the sky, and his gaze was incomparably deep. He also saw Bufang and Xiaoya. However, unlike the others, this old man's gaze didn't casually sweep around. Instead, he seriously observed Bufang and Xiaoya's cooking skills. A sealed child. Who would have thought that the Taotia's soul that had disappeared for a long time was actually hidden in a child's body? Swish! His robe fluttered. The old man's beard and white eyebrows fluttered. He landed in front of Bufang, looking incomparably ordinary. There wasn't any frightening aura around him. The little girl's face was filled with confusion. Bufang looked at this old man, and his brows furrowed. He hid the little girl behind him, and his eyes stared straight at the old man. The old man clasped his hands behind his back, and his gaze retracted from the little girl. Finally, it landed on Bufang. Looking at Bufang, the wrinkles on the old man's face suddenly trembled, and he let out a soft cry of surprise. This aura. You're the chef from outside the valley who defeated Wenrin Chou in the chef's challenge? You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.